welcome to a new episode of the Game Informer Show. I am your host, Ben Hansen, joined as always by permanent co-host Timothy Turry.
Hello, it's good to be here. Also, it's good to have you back because hosting on your own is hard. You need a co-host.
You did a really good job.
Well,
I
thanks.
listened to last week's episode. I was out of town all last week. Listened to it and really enjoyed sitting back and pretending like I didn't work at Game Informer and just enjoying it as an outsider.
And you actually had some news for you, Ben.
Oh, Christ, no.
Oh, my God. You have a laundry list of details for me? Everything I did wrong?
Well, you called him Jimmy Kimmel instead of Jimmy Fallon in the setup. They caught it, but I was wincing really hard when I heard that.
I didn't get any sleep that night, if it helps you. But you know what would have been harder?
What's that?
It would have been harder to do a good show if we didn't have great guests last week. Mm-hmm. Which is a problem this week now.
Yeah, because we have...
Hey, guys.
Tweedledee and Tweedledum over here. We have Matthew Cotto.
Hello, I'm Tweedledee, actually.
and then the great Matt Miller.
Well, at least it's a lot of Matts.
Yeah, man. We're really rounding out every single base. Last week, enjoyed the show. Really enjoyed it when Andy used the word drip as an insult, called somebody a drip.
It's always a nice, dust that one off and you realize, why did this ever collect dust to begin with? This is a great insult.
When was that an insult? What is the time frame during which...
Was he playing with someone
the
on...
1830s?
I don't know.
I think it's Texas in like 1989.
I think that Andy's finally showed his hand as a time traveler. Yeah. This only time travelers use the word drip.
So, hell of a show this week. Just a hell of a show. We're going to talk about TGS, Tokyo Game Show. Matt Miller went to Japan. We're going to talk to Kato about all sorts of ball games and Forza 6. We're going to talk to Tim about Soma. We're going to talk a little bit about Animal Crossing. And then get some reader emails, listener emails. Final segment is an interview with Greg Miller.
Game Over Greggy himself.
Mr. Game Over Greggy. So if you don't know Greg Miller, he was at IGN for years and years and years.
Hosted Up at Noon.
Exactly. That's kind of how he became famous. Then he branched off from IGN to start his own Patreon type thing with his friends from IGN who also left, and they started Kind of Funny Games. Just talking about that transition, what it's like to try and go headfirst into the social media world of covering games.
Really, really fascinating alternate perspective on the industry, and what a nice, funny, smart dude with a lot of hard work, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. And we talked to him a lot about his weird relationship with Kojima. And I will say they have a weird relationship.
Oh, Kojima is his father.
That's right. Well, it's a clone situation.
I did not know that.
It's bizarre. But that's all at the back half of the show. For right now, we should talk about the biggest games that came out this week. Tim, seems like you're up first. Seems like there's a lot of buzz around this game called Soma.
You know what I want to start off by asking?
Yeah.
What do you guys know about Soma?
Well, certainly hearing that it's the people who did Amnesia is, it's a big plus.
Yeah.
And I think, having played some of that and whatever, even though it's, not related per se, but knowing it's, a lot of the same sort of horror concepts, I'm instantly intrigued.
I know that it's not that other underwater horror game that we did a preview of that one time.
Narcosis.
Right. It's not that.
By Honor Code, I think they landed on for a name.
Right.
That's VR as
Welcome to my world as previews editor, by the way, where they all sort of swim together in my head. I'm like, we need to preview that one underwater game, but not that other one. Can you do that, Tim?
You got it, man.
Yeah.
You get 5 previews back.
Do you think, all right, in an alternate world where BioShock never came out, would we also have this big flood of underwater horror games?
Yeah.
It's just a cool setting no matter what?
I think so, especially for horror.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think there's a lot of obvious stuff with connections there.
It's funny because I think not only in video games, but other things, you hear people bring up the Abyss quite a lot, and it's
Not enough.
And it's, when I was growing up, that was just a movie, one of many movies or whatever. And it's interesting that, years later, it's this sort of touchstone for, obviously underwater things. And,
Yeah.
And I think even, wasn't it Leviathan? Wasn't that a movie around the time that was kind of a similar...
Tapping into that isolated at the bottom of the sea type thing.
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting with the Abyss, and I'll explain why there's connections there, is I was writing my review and getting some feedback from Jeff Marchiafava, and he's like, Tim, the Abyss was not a horror movie. It's just a sci-fi movie. I'm like, oh, well, I guess I was just a wimp when I watched it then, because it freaked me out, and now adult me needs to reclassify
it was
that.
terrifying in a different way.
Yeah,
but
yeah.
He's right. It's not exactly a horror movie.
Are we talking about like the ending, like the descent?
But
like
even
when
that's not horror. It's just
tense.
kind of
It's
like
tense.
tense.
Yeah.
Right. That movie's great. I saw that movie the first time a couple years ago, by the way. I was really impressed.
It is held up. And I think I just maybe related too much with the characters in that situation.
You related too much to
I don't
the
know, or
characters who
I
were
just
trapped
felt...
at the bottom of the ocean?
Listen, have you ever been stuck at the bottom of a swimming pool I haven't, but
You haven't
I imagine
seen
it'd be scary.
Yeah, Tim's parents' basement growing up was just flooded.
It's a pool.
Yeah.
That's
So-
where he lived.
Soma, speaking of relating to someone, I'm gonna talk to you as a person who's played this game, and you'll relate to me as I talk to it. So basically, yes, this is by Frictional. They created Amnesia, and that was 5 years ago. And at the same time, they sort of like relaunched and resurrected the horror genre in a way. I mean, it was there. We were still at that point, getting Dead Space games, and Resident Evil's always been a big horror contender, even though it changed. But after Amnesia came out, we saw a lot of these first-person, more evasive, non-combat focused horror games coming out, like your Outlasts, and there was a sequel to Amnesia by Chinese Room. Even more recently, we've seen PT. I don't think that something like PT would have existed without Frictional. To say that they're
Oh, really?
I don't think so.
I feel like Kojima's in such his own world that you can't really.
Yeah, I would argue your point on that, but it's hard to say. I think that there's pieces of Amnesia that you see in games like PT. But anyway, all that is to say is that Frictional is important to the horror genre. And after a sort of a flub up, like, in my opinion, Machine for Pigs, which wasn't really scary, focused too much on like a linear story, and it fell flat to me. It was really, really cool to play Soma and walk away not only having played like one of the more tense horror games I've played in a long time, but also one of the most just fascinating sci-fi stories and concepts that I've not, there's a whole wide world, a wide ocean of sci-fi stories I haven't read, but I've never even heard anyone talk about some of the concepts that Soma gets into. It's tough because you can't go that deep in it without spoiling stuff.
Yeah, it seemed like that was the big struggle for writing your review. There's some really interesting, weird stuff happening in this, and you can't even touch it.
And it was relieving because I read some other reviews and some other people were tiptoeing around it just as carefully. But what we do know is that, and what I can tell you without ruining it, is you just kind of come to on this underwater research facility, and you're trying to figure out what the purpose of this place even is. Why am I here? You're a guy named Simon, and you're talking to someone through through the radio. It turns out like you're not so alone. There's someone else here. You're talking to them, trying to find out how to get to them. Who are they? Why are we here? And you find out that these robots that talk, which isn't that crazy, but it just feels like these robots are. There's one instance where you have to like reroute power to open up a door, and then this robot just starts howling and screaming and swearing, and he seems like he's totally like, why are you calling me a robot, man? Like, look at my hands here. And he's just like, clank, clank. These are my, like, he's saying metal hands. He's like, I don't know what you're talking about. My name's Carl. Please help me up. You can see I've been crushed. And you're just like, you're a robot. And you have to make some choices throughout the game. And sometimes that involves...
Hang on. We gotta slow down here.
Yeah, let's slow
down.
down.
Is that a thing throughout the entire game? Is robots that are convinced that they're humans?
I can't go in too deeply into it, but that was from
wild.
that
You're
was
gonna have to make some choices, Ben. Just deal with it.
There is a preview, and that was what I got from my last hands-on with it at E3, but it goes a lot deeper than that, and no pun intended, but it goes so much deeper than that. I was actually, the game was, I had played about 2 hours of it for a preview earlier on, and after that, I was looking forward to it, but it doesn't deliver in the big scares like Amnesia did the first time you played it. In fact, like, I mentioned how influential Amnesia was. Like, we've gotten so used to that thing. If you like horror games where it's like, all right, there's the monster. Here they come. They're looking that way. I need to slowly crouch, turn off my flashlight, and walk around them as they hopefully don't turn towards me. There's a lot of that in this game. That's not as tense as it used to be, but the overall, like, ominous atmosphere of being underwater. Sometimes you're outside the facility, like on the ocean floor, and playing with headphones on makes you feel so claustrophobic and trapped in this weird way. But just overall, really tense, engaging story, some cool puzzles.
What if I'm really interested in games with a unique story, and so I want to play this game, but I'm also the biggest coward in the world? How scared of this game should I be?
I think, what's the least creepy game that you've been creeped out by? Can you think of that?
Oh, God, there was
Smurfs.
one. Oh, my God. I wish I could
Atari.
remember. It was recent. Like, we just covered it a couple weeks ago. I was like, this is unsettling, and I know it shouldn't be.
Anyway,
It's gonna drive me
Mario
nuts.
Maker.
Yeah.
Something in that
Well,
vein.
the Ghost House
It really
is Miller.
was.
Anyway, yeah, I think you would be creeped out by it, but if you don't use headphones, if you keep the lights on, if you play with a friend, I think that like past the controller, I think you'll be in better shape. And
By the way, Tearaway Unfolded was what I was getting at. It kind of weirded me out. Like the weird like fall festival vibe in Tearaway Unfolded, it was unsettling.
hey, don't play Soma.
I'm not gonna. Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. I don't think this game is for you.
Yeah,
I mean, Soma's definitely not the scariest game I've ever played as a horror fan. But it is really well done. I'm really excited to talk to other people who have like made it through the story, and there's just so many. It makes you kind of question. You'll talk to someone and you'll be like, "Oh, you're in a situation like in a Mass Effect game," and it's like, how do you think about synthetic life? Do you think it has value in this way? And like when I play Mass Effect, I'm like this cold robot. Well, I'm this cold killer where I just like, no, they're all robots.
Oh, the robot
Yeah,
racist?
like I will kill these robots like because they are not people. And Soma presents that sort of conundrum in such a way that I like paused and like had to think about certain choices that I was making, and I don't want to go into it more than that.
Okay, is it a matter of there being a lot of twists in this game?
There
or
are twists, yeah.
does it kind of reframe how the entire game is perceived?
He
Okay.
said he didn't want
I know, I'm
to
just
say
trying to get
anything
all of those
about
things.
it, Ben.
All of those things.
Okay.
What you've seen from coverage before is
Yeah.
just like a kind of scratching the surface. What we've seen is a little bit more traditional for horror games.
Right.
Like that Narcosis game that you mentioned. It looks cool, especially as like a VR game, but it seems like it's so far a little bit more straightforward. Like you're a person trapped in the bottom of the ocean. And I guess that could have twists and turns. I can't, speak out of turn since it's not out yet, but it is way more than just what you might think from a horror game underwater.
So on par with Amnesia for Amnesia fans?
I like it more than Amnesia.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I think Amnesia is really cool in its moments, but Amnesia really, I think, struggled to tell a story because it relied on that sort of like kind of Victorian age, like flowery, like last time you tried to read Frankenstein, maybe like I read Dracula a while back and fell in love with it, but after a few
Read
chapters,
Dracula and loving it?
yes, dead and loving it. But basically, you have to get used to that old, style of writing and language. And I never clicked into it with Amnesia, which was going for that same vibe. Some is just more straightforward storytelling.
Okay.
In a traditional sense.
Interesting. I think I'm going to start it up tonight. Does it have a slow burn in the beginning, or am I going to be jumping out of my seat immediately?
I'm not going to talk about the beginning.
Holy Lord. All right. Miller,
Hey.
are robots people?
Well, is that your convoluted way to transition into talking about Destiny?
Oh, also, I gave it an 8.5 out of 10.
Oh, that's right.
But we should talk about robots and Destiny.
yeah, Miller.
There's
We can talk
robots in
about Destiny.
Destiny.
That's true. You've been playing a lot of Destiny.
Answer the question, Miller. Are you a robot or not?
Stab him! Quick, Kato, he's getting away.
Wait,
It's like a Blade Runner test. You know,
This
where
is a
you-
Blade Runner test.
Didn't you used to go by Kilroy in certain circles?
That's true.
Oh boy,
That's true.
That was a robot.
Domo
named-
arigato.
Yeah, that's right.
Mr. Roboto.
From a Styx
And his
song.
last name was Bot.
There's your segue into TGS right there.
Oh,
Yeah. Which
there
do you
you
want? You
go.
want to talk about TGS? You want to talk about Destiny?
It's like
You got
Until Dawn.
options here.
There's branching paths here.
Let's briefly touch on Destiny. And I know saying that to Matt Miller is just playing with matchsticks around dynamite. but-
Well, here's what I'll tell you about Destiny is that it was after all of the excitement that I had about getting to dive into this game, because I got to we were at Bungie to play it so
Yeah.
early, and we're some of the first people to actually go through all those new story missions and everything. I didn't get to play a lot of the first week, which was a real bummer because I was in Japan.
Right. But you were very glued into like the Destiny community.
Yeah.
And by the way, just from my perspective, it's nice to see that we weren't crazy playing that story content at Bungie and we're all leaving. Like, that was really impressive.
awesome, yeah.
And now everybody's like, holy crap, Bungie, nothing bad.
Yeah,
nice
it's
work.
It's real solid. I mean, since I got home a couple days ago, I've gotten into the game, as you might expect, and
Yeah.
been playing that in the evenings, and it's really awesome. I would really like to see even the people at this table try Destiny: The Taken King out. Like, I would love, as much as I've really enjoyed the first year of playing that game, it was an experience that even for hardcore fans, you were in there kind of being like, oh, this is so cool, and it could be so much cooler if this was true, right? Like if this was different in this way and this was different in this way. And I've said before, and I feel it even more strongly now that I've seen the finished product, that like it would be so cool to dive into this game for the first time now,
Right.
and to just not really have that much of a background with the game and just go in and see the way that a year's worth of public feedback has let them reshape the game into something that's just really awesome.
Yeah, I mean, Andy just posted his review yesterday, actually, and he gave it a 9.5.
Yeah.
It's pretty crazy. It's also crazy that
And
Andy
his
reviewed
first
something.
review in like a decade.
Yeah.
Andy adores Destiny.
Yeah.
And what did we give the original core game, or what did you give it?
I gave it an 8.75, which
Okay.
I actually know, having talked with Andy, that Andy and I are pretty much on the same page about that. That we both really liked the original game. I think more than many people did, and continued playing it throughout the last year. Andy and I both play together a lot in the evenings playing Destiny along with some other friends. And but we also both had a lot of complaints and a lot of concerns about things. And I think that jump up in score for this year's installment is reflective of there being some significant movements forward on those steps that needed to make it into the really, really sort of awesome game it could be. And it bodes well for what we know to be basically a 10-year plan of moving Destiny forward as an epic that you can kind of continue to follow along with and sort of step into for, even for people who aren't going to be super hardcore with it. It's a game that you can definitely go in, get the next piece of it, play it for 2 weeks or a month or something like that, and then kind of put it down. Be like, okay, well, that was what I wanted out of Destiny for this year or this couple of months or whatever, and then I'll come back with the next expansion and see what's going on.
And throw more money at the screen.
That's right. Throwing money at the screen, as has been the meme of the summer.
But we
about
should
that
talk
game.
about the reason you weren't playing Destiny.
Yeah. So I went out to Tokyo Game Show so that I could put on a PlayStation VR headset and get the cold that you hear in my voice right now.
I heard it a little bit one morning. I had to talk to you. Of course, it was evening for me, and you picked up the phone. I'm like, oh, I think Miller's got it.
I did. Why do they do that? Why do they don't clean those headsets well?
Really? I thought, don't they wipe them down?
They do, but it's the same cloth, and they don't have any spray on it, anything.
And
so
they just wipe
basically
their
they're
nose
just
with it.
re-rubbing the germs onto the headset for you.
Oh my gosh. But they're always so clean in Japan. They always wear the little masks every time anybody's remotely sick.
I am utterly just baffled by the culture around cleanliness in Japan, because it is amazing. Like, it's way cleaner. Like, the actual streets are cleaner, the bathrooms are cleaner. All that's great. They have masks on their face if they're not feeling well to sort of be polite and not further spread it. And yet there's these certain sort of fundamentals of staying healthy that are not engaged with. Things like a lot of the bathrooms don't have soap. So that sort of defeats some of the purpose.
Depending on where you are, you might even be expected to bring your own tissue paper
Yeah,
or
exactly.
stuff
I
like
was gonna
that.
say, you don't have anything for your hands, just to okay, fine, I just won't wash my hands.
Yeah.
Yeah. And there's no garbages anywhere.
There's no. You're totally right. There's so few garbages.
So you carry your garbage for miles looking for something.
You do.
One of the most striking things, we'll totally go back to the VR, but striking
Let's
on your
talk
thing
more about soap in Japan.
The most striking thing I once saw was coming off the train station and walking up the stairs, and there was just a wayward piece of garbage, like plastic or something, and someone was just, when people get off the train in Japan, they are the fastest speed walkers that you can imagine. A lot of folks are in a hurry, going from train to train, and someone just didn't break stride, picked up that piece of garbage that had nothing to do with their life, and just carried it with them. And knowing how few trash cans there are in Japan, that's a commitment.
It is
You
a commitment.
care about that.
Put
And
a ring on that garbage.
yeah, Ben, that's what I was thinking. Anyway, so that stuck with me, and maybe I pick up more garbage than I used to now. I don't.
This was also the first time I'd been in Japan where I actually had the experience of being on a train where the train attendants were outside pushing people to get the doors to close.
Was that
which I had heard about before, but I'd never had happen to me.
Where was it?
We got on a wrong train off of one of the loops taking us to the show.
The Makahare?
Well, it's sort of like a side trek around part of the Yamanote loop.
Okay.
Which doesn't mean anything to
kind of
somebody who's
fun.
never been to Tokyo. But when we got back on, it was rush hour and people were heading into the city, and it was totally packed. And so when we stepped on, it was already packed and more people came on behind us. And then the attendants came and they just pushed the two people that were in the doorway were charging them and pushing them until the doors could just barely shut.
You must have loved that.
And we were just, totally squeezed super tight in there for 20 minutes.
And it was you and Kim, right?
It was it was ridiculous.
You know, being in Minnesota, we've got the light rail here, and it's like on Vikings game day, it gets crowded on Sunday morning. The trains will come by and they'll open up, and you'll be on the platform, and the people will be like, "Oh no, we're crowded. We can't fit any more people in." And be like, "I've been to Tokyo. We can fit in probably like double the amount of people there. So just look, you just run into the crowd, and you feel like people all kind of." Well, I never. And you're like, hey, man, I tell you, man, this is nothing.
Someone in one of the the Minneapolis light rail train cars is like set up a cot and like their own little tent.
I mean, there's definitely in the very compacted area that is Tokyo, people have had to come to terms with the idea that there's times I do not get to have personal space at all.
Right.
Anyway.
But that VR experience, I made it all worthwhile.
So I went to Tokyo Game Show, which was, of course, one of easily the most exciting game show I've ever been to.
Are you okay?
Ooh, we're talking
I see you,
We're talking
Miller.
about TGS.
TGS has been on a long period, I think, of. I went in 2008, and this was true then. And I'm going again this year. After many years, I had the same impression, but more so that it's a show that just doesn't have excitement around it, and the game publishers and developers, I think, feel that, and they don't make announcements there, and that perpetuates the problem. And the show kind of continues into the sense of a kind of a decline that doesn't, to be fair, represent what's going on in the Japanese gaming scene.
It's like
which is still really
now,
vibrant and really exciting. Like when I'm there, when we were there, we had a good bit of time that we weren't going to the show. That was just going around on trains and going to stores and checking out the surrounding area. And gaming is in a lot of ways way more mainstream there than it is here. You see men and women, kids on the trains like playing mobile games and playing DS and playing Vita. You see ads for games like Mario Maker just all over the place.
Puzzle and Dragons is just coded everything.
Puzzle and Dragons is huge. You've got
Monster Hunter.
You got people wearing, like just as a matter of course, you see people just wearing video game T-shirts all over the place when you go out into the city parks and that kind of thing. So that's really cool. But somehow Tokyo Game Show, and I don't know if it's the fault of the showrunners or the publishers who aren't bringing interesting stuff, but whatever it is, you don't have that kind of excitement.
Are you sure it's not just the Western perspective? Are you sure that the Japanese audience isn't leaving going like, oh man, I'm excited about Yokai Watch 4?
That is possible to some degree. I mean, I think
it's tricky because we're a global outlet, so we kind of have to place that into perspective that way.
We do. I mean, I think certainly, as I mentioned, you see a lot of people playing mobile games. Mobile gaming in Japan mobile gaming here is big, but mobile gaming in Japan is huge.
It's king, yeah.
And so you see a lot of the booths, and a lot of the biggest booths are mobile gaming focused, and even some of the publishers that here, when they come to like E3, they're bringing their like big AAA games. Their largest displays will be for their mobile titles. And so I think you're right, Ben. I think there's some aspect of it that as those games just don't, frankly, matter as much to us, that the excitement is maybe lost on us because a lot of those mobile games, even if we wanted to get excited about them, they're not going to come here.
Right.
Did you go to the public day, and did you get any sense of maybe what the crowds were like?
The public days are for anybody who hasn't gone are totally swamped. I mean, it's basically impossible to do any work during those days. By way of comparison, I think their internal count was somewhere in the range of like 20 or 30,000 during the business days of who was there, and during the public days each day it was something like 100,000. So a lot of people.
Yeah.
During the business days, it is nice actually that they have those business days because it's easier to get around, to get to appointments, to do the work that you need to do, as whether you're there as like we are as press or you're there for other business reasons. But by and large, I think you can't come away from the show without feeling a little bit of like disappointment that like, oh wow, well the biggest game I saw here was the announcement of Umbrella Corps, right? Which is it's fine, but like it's not like a game that's gonna like rock your world necessarily.
Yeah.
Right. And
Resident Evil's not in that title at all, right?
no, it's not. It's just called Umbrella Corps.
Really?
Here.
Yeah.
In overseas, it's called Biohazard Umbrella Corps.
Why would they not call it Resident Evil Umbrella Corps?
They don't call it that.
That's really confusing
That's why,
to me.
I don't know.
I don't know. And of course, that's a first-person sort of squad-based multiplayer game. And then I looked at the trailers. I'm like, this does not look like well, think about Capcom. Like, how many first-person shooters have they ever made? It's like Umbrella Chronicles and Darkside Chronicles on Wii, maybe. Probably forgetting some, but that's a odd course for them and that franchise. Did you play it?
Yeah.
How is it?
It's okay. I mean, like I said, it's not anything that struck me as, from what I played, as completely changing the world, but it was solid. I mean, it had some interesting ideas.
Like the zombie jammer thing? Because like everyone's got a zombie jammer, right? So the zombies aren't attacking them.
Yeah.
What's the zombie jammer?
Zombie jammer is this big red backpack you wear that's really bright and easy for your enemies to see and shoot.
Okay.
And the zombie jammer lets the zombie see you, but not see you as a target. And so it's meant to be kind of a strategic tool where you can do things like go into a group of zombies and stand in their midst. And then when your enemies come in, they shoot the zombies so that they can shoot you. And that gets the zombies pissed off. And the zombies attack them instead of you.
Gotcha.
Interesting.
That's like one of the examples they give of like how it would work. In practice, at least in the early matches that I played, it ended up being kind of like an odd... a new thing I had to pay attention to, right? Because like I'd be in the middle of a fight and all of a sudden a zombie's eating my shoulder and I die. And
you're just trying to shoot the other guy.
I was just trying to shoot the other guy, and I'm trying to be fair here. I don't mean to imply that that's necessarily bad. Maybe I should have been paying more attention, and like that would be an interesting thing once I got into the game and I understood how it worked. Anyway, it was an interesting announcement. It was not certainly what people were expecting from Capcom.
And it's a smaller title, right? It seems like it's coming out.
It's a digital only title. It's like going to be $29.99 when it comes here. So. You know, I think it has some potential, but they're entering a genre that is very, very crowded.
Right.
And they've got some hard work ahead if they want to distinguish themselves.
Yeah, I think people kind of saw it as a spiritual successor to Operation Raccoon City.
Which is not a great thing to have a spiritual successor.
Right. Yeah, but I there's no relation to that game. Different developer. Everything's different perspective. Right. Yeah.
There were some other interesting things at the show. The Bloodborne expansion is something I know a lot of us are going to be really stoked about.
The Old Hunters?
The Old Hunters. I got to play a little bit of that and thought it was really what I wanted, which is to say not dramatically different from what has come before.
Yeah.
I mean, Bloodborne was a great game. This looked like it had new areas, new monsters, new weapons, and otherwise did not really change the Bloodborne formula too profoundly.
If I understand this, in Bloodborne, they reference this city that burned down, Old Yarnum, I think it is.
Sure.
And, there was just like this group of like kind of like demolition hunters that were working on it, and they just ended up burning it all down.
Yeah.
And from what I had read, it seemed like there was at least speculation, if not confirmation, that this does take place before Bloodborne proper.
That I don't know.
Okay.
I know that the focus of the story is on both those hunters you talk about and just the broader group of like the hunters who are described in that story, in the base game story. And so I'm interested to kind of see what they do with it. But it seemed totally solid. That was a good announcement from them. Sony, I think, generally had a pretty solid lineup. They had the announcement that Gravity Days, which I think is called Gravity Rush in the States, was moving from Vita to a new version on PS4, and they're going to have a sequel. That was a game really well received in Japan, and I think pretty well received here.
Tim, you played it, right?
Yeah. Actually, Richard from Louisiana was, in case we didn't get to it here, wrote in an email asking what we thought about it and if we're excited about the announcement. I played, when I got my Vita, it was there was like a lot of PlayStation Plus games. It was like that and Uncharted and some other games I didn't play. But I thought that Gravity Rush was really well done. I'm excited to see how it feels with the 6-axis, or if you use the 6-axis to aim.
What?
Funny story.
You'd aim. So just a quick premise is like you aim with the Vita in the direction that you want to go, and that can be on a wall, and then suddenly you'd be standing on that wall and the perspective would shift. It would maybe make you sick, Ben. But
Sounds like it.
It was a very fun little concept. For a
Sounds
game.
pretty scary too.
My funny story about Gravity Days is we tried to play it at the Sony booth because we had a press appointment to see the games that Sony had on display. They would not let us play it because we were overseas press.
That's bizarre. The game's been released on Vita.
I know.
Miller, you seem very pissy about the whole Sony experience.
Well, I'll admit,
Okay,
I can echo some of those frustrations from previous
You've been to a
years.
Sony booth. and
I've tried that game.
It's very, very odd. You get there. Oftentimes, when you go as press to a show, you make appointments so that you can you have to see a lot of things, and so you go and you have somebody who kind of walks you around and shows you the stuff that you like. Oh, okay, so you have this here. Cool. What should I know about this? That kind of thing. And they don't really, for whatever reason, at Sony's TGS booth, they don't do that. You basically show up at the desk and you get your press credentials, and then they just push you back out into the booth where everybody else is and
if there's no
leave you to tend to whatever you can.
If there's no English-speaking Sony people there that know who you are, you're not going to have much luck there.
No, and so we, played whatever we could. That came to a head for me, and I wrote an article on the website about sort of this baffling experience I had with the PlayStation VR.
The new name for Morpheus.
Yes. And I mean, it was weird because I messed around some with Oculus at previous shows, so I wasn't completely going in blind to the VR experience. But I hadn't messed around with the Sony VR unit yet. And all of a sudden, I'm kind of pushed into this area where they've set aside a bunch of small little booths for people to play the VR stuff. And I go in, and there's Japanese speaking women who are guiding these processes and getting the headsets put on. And then I just didn't know what to do. I didn't know what was happening in these demos. So I went into one. I didn't even know what the game was, and it turns out it was like a Japanese karaoke game, and so everything is scrolling across in kanji. So I don't know what to do with that.
So you
and
just kind of sit there and hum along, or
so
what?
all of a sudden, I'm in the middle of a gaggle of J-pop girls on stage who are dancing back and forth, like live action VR. And I've never had one of these VR headsets on.
And
before.
you came alive.
And I'm just I don't know what's happening.
Did you sing?
No, I mean I don't know what the song is. And so the woman who's running that booth is trying to encourage me, and I'm like, I don't know what the song is. I don't know what the words are. It's really weird. I had another weird one where I went in and there's this elderly Japanese man in a 3-piece suit who was my partner because he was next to me in line.
Then he leans over and just massive cleavage.
And he's playing one role of the playroom demo, which is just meant to sort of be a showcase for how the VR thing works. And there's two Japanese women there who are setting up the headsets for us and starting the demo off, and then they start shouting at us to do something, and I'm like, I don't understand. I don't know what you're saying. I'm shouting back to them,
drowning. Your eyes are drowning in your own tears because of the headset.
Trying to tell me what I should be doing in the demo, which, as it turns out, I'm supposed to be moving my head to smash buildings as a giant monster.
Oh, okay.
I guess.
So what's funny is that they're yelling at you in Japanese, and when you don't understand, they just yell at you again in more Japanese,
Perfect.
which is what you usually would do when someone doesn't understand your language.
Yeah, it was.
What they should have done is grasp your head and started moving it around violently.
So anyway,
And infecting you with diseases.
This you can read about my full experience in my article. I don't need to belabor the point, other than saying that I was completely confounded for an hour and a half.
But it all came together when you got plopped in front of Summer Lesson, right?
Summer Lesson.
I want to know all about Summer Lesson.
Okay, Summer Lesson is super weird. And to be fair, I think Summer Lesson was not new to TGS. I think it's been shown
It
previously.
was there last year, I'm pretty sure. Yeah, it's from Harada, the creator of Tekken.
I think more people got exposure to it this time around.
Yeah.
So Summer Lesson and Summer Lesson was also nice for me because it was basically in English.
Okay.
Sort of. The idea there's two demos. One was made a couple years ago, and one I think was out for E3 2015. But again, I had not played it. Mm-hmm. And the idea is you're a Japanese language teacher who's going to visit an American pop star who is vacationing in Japan. This is all sort of implied. And she wants to learn Japanese from you, and so she's this cute blonde girl in Daisy Dukes. who, when you arrive, she starts talking to you, and it's kind of like a flirt simulator. Is the
Love
nearest
it.
thing that
I'm on board.
Like, it's basically a demo that like she's there and she asks you if you're her Japanese sensei, and whether you say yes with your head or no, because you know that registers with the headset. She's like, "Oh, you're just being silly," and the demo continues, and she wants to learn Japanese from you. The irony is not lost on me that here I am in Japan, not knowing any Japanese, with the Japanese demo person getting me all set up here, and now I'm in a demo about teaching Japanese to this girl, and it's weird. I mean, it's just weird because...
Did you feel like you had to call your wife afterwards?
Well, okay, so what's odd about it is that, like, and here's something I will say that's complimentary both to what I think is on the way for all of us here in the next couple of years with VR stuff, with Oculus and with PlayStation VR, is that there is a reality to the situation that is absent in monitor gaming.
They call it presence, right? Is that the buzzword for it?
There is a sense that when your entire visual field is filled with the thing around you, there's less of a barrier between you and the experience that is at hand. And so even though these are like animated characters, it does feel genuinely like weird when this girl, you know, like at one point the girl sits down and she has she's looking for something, she leans across you to get something that's on the other side of you, and so she's, you know, very purposefully too close to you, right? In a way that feels like she's kind of in your space, and it's a little bit like, oh, this is weird because like I'm supposed to be her teacher.
Yeah.
I mean, I've going to scare you too, Ben. It's a little scary game for you.
I like imagining Miller just like rapidly hugging the air in front of him. Just like an idiot.
It reminds me of like, you know, I played the HTC Vive at PAX, and like that sense of like intrusion of space and perspective, like with a giant whale swimming in front of you. Mm-hmm. It's like it's bizarre, and you feel like your space is being invaded, but it's very alien because I have never been, and I never will be on a sunken ship in the bottom of the ocean with a giant whale swimming towards me. But yours, I feel like there's parts of our brain that would more easily relate just this normal, someone could personally invade your space. So I just feel like it's just this very grounded thing to build off of for VR.
Yeah, I mean, the potential for creating interactive content where you really feel like you're engaging with a character, whether it's something like, you know, like communicating a tense dramatic scene, like something you'd see on TV, or, you know, doing something that's what this demo is sort of alluding towards, which is the potential for basically doing like relationship simulator types of games and that kind of stuff, which is not something that we're particularly familiar with or frankly comfortable with in the United States, but
relationships,
it is for like those sorts of things I'm very confident are coming with VR.
Did you think about how excited, like what if just BioWare or now CD Projekt Red just decided like, hey, we're going to do this spin-off thing, some of your data transfers over, you can kind of see how some of these relationships play out through Geralt's eyes or Shepard's eyes or something, like
take a bath.
There's people that have flirted with that line of dating sim in these games where it's like, maybe the waters are warmer than we think.
Oh, 100%. Like
certainly with you it seems, Ben. That's fine.
It's like when it comes to VR, I'm very curious how that kind of stuff blossoms. I mean, obviously the close cousin is just pure erotic content for this stuff, and like people always talk about how important porn is to tech industries.
To moving tech forward, sure.
Exactly, like the VHS and whatnot. That's always like the big example, and it's always like this unspoken thing. I think when we're all talking about VR, like porn could be the thing that pushes this over the top.
Yeah.
And this is like I understand that this demo is way more subtle and more understated than it could be.
It is. It goes as far as it needs to communicate that sense of like closeness and sort of like physical intimate space can be something that VR can communicate.
So if there's any doubts, it's just a kind of a proof of concept.
It is a proof of concept.
Did it change your perspective or your outlook on VR?
I think that each time I've tried VR, I've become more convinced of its potential for being something that's interesting and different. I think that in the case of PlayStation VR, there's still problems with blurriness and focus.
Okay.
It's not comfortable. after, as I said, I was there for an hour and a half trying out various demos, and about halfway through that, I started to get a serious headache.
Ooh, perfect.
And that's a problem. I mean, like if you can really only have sessions of half an hour before you're like, I really don't want to do this anymore. This is not comfortable.
But at least they gave you that shirt. I tried out PlayStation VR, and all I got was this lousy cold and headache.
Well, I certainly got that because this was at the end of the show. I had been doing totally fine in Japan up until this point, and an hour after my PlayStation VR appointment, I had a cold.
Wow, that sounds great. Hey, rapid fire real quick.
Okay.
I saw Shuhei Yoshida, who's the head of PlayStation and game development within Sony.
Okay.
He said that his most anticipated game of 2016 is Neo.
Yeah.
Neo, I guess you'd frame it, which is the new game from Team Ninja.
But not new. It's new.
Right.
This is a game that's a revival of a game that everyone thought was dead. And it looks quite nice. I mean, imagine like a samurai version of Dark Souls, and that's pretty much what you're looking at.
Yeah, there's
on that one. I mean, if they do it right.
Not a VR game.
Not a VR game.
We've moved on from VR now. We're talking about Neo. This is a Koei Tecmo project.
Yeah, PS4 exclusive.
Yep, not one that that they had all that much to show other than just some brief gameplay clips. But it looks solid, and it's definitely one that I hope that they bring over.
Right. They also announced Kingdom Hearts. Let's just get this out of the way real quick. 2.8, which is Roman numeral 2.8, final chapter prologue, which includes Kingdom Hearts X back cover and Kingdom Hearts .2 Birth by Sleep fragmentary passage. So everybody can look forward to that.
There's 3 games.
It's all in there.
A lot of kids,
they're all there.
A lot of kids are gonna get the wrong present for Christmas on that one.
They're just gonna get a calculator. Oh, damn it!
Oh, well.
It's the same name.
Kingdom Hearts, I think, is just as a side note, real quick, is that like that's a weird game that's still like. I was a fan of Kingdom Hearts, like I was, and I use that specifically was and not is because Kingdom Hearts 2 was so long ago, and I have not played all of these crazy offshoot games.
Yeah.
And I want to be excited for Kingdom Hearts 3. I just don't know how to be.
Right.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I get it.
Like, it feels like that game has been so long in coming, and there's been all these weird, like, nonsense title games that have come in the interim that I just can't bring myself to get that enthusiastic about. And I know that there's like this like super hardcore group of people who are wildly stoked about Kingdom Hearts 3 coming and sort of wrapping all that up, but I don't know where that wider audience is that's like 10 years older than when they played Kingdom Hearts 2.
Yeah, it's tough.
Anyway.
But there was a game that seemed especially up your alley, and I'm curious about it because I really enjoyed aspects of Valiant Hearts, and it's the creative director of Valiant Hearts' new mobile game.
Yeah, he created a new studio called DigiX Art,
Wait, Valiant Hearts is the one that sounds like a 90s PlayStation 1 RPG, but
Correct.
It's actually about like
World War One. Yes.
Okay.
Lost in Harmony is the name of this game. It's really beautiful and an intriguing mix of different genres. They call it a narrative music game. And it's about a young teenager who is trying to overcome his fears with the help of his maybe girlfriend, who rides on his back as he skateboards through various environments.
A lot of things I didn't expect.
All right, I'm on board.
So you view the game.
Surprises.
You actually see their faces are coming at you. You see sort of the opposite perspective from where you normally have like a driving game.
Crash Bandicoot style.
Yes, where they're coming towards you, and you're doing a mix of like dodging things that are coming along the paths of the road or whatever he's driving along, and then you're also tapping on the screen. It's a mobile game, tapping on the screen and doing slides on the screen along with the beats of the music.
I'm on board. Sounds great.
It's really cool. It's really simple and beautiful, and each level is themed around one of his fears. Fear of water, fear of heights, fear of crowds. And so he's clearly like this really scared kid. And it's not entirely clear whether the girl that's with him is this like imaginary construct or if she's a real girl who really like cares about him.
You're really getting a lot of this mobile game. I like it.
It's pretty neat.
Yeah.
And it was one of several indie titles that impressed me at TGS. It was weird because they had terrible placement for their indie game section. They put it off in this whole other hall, separate from most of the games, next to the merch booths and the food stands. That's where you could find the indie games. And yet, of all these different game companies that were there, a lot of these indie games were some of the most interesting. You had Lost in Harmony. You had a really cool game called Mushroom 11 that was there. There were
fans of Mushroom 10 have a lot to look forward to.
There was a cool game that was sort of like inspired by Vanillaware games called Black Witchcraft that was really cool. PS1 era throwback RPG called Y2K, a postmodern RPG.
I saw that at PAX.
Yeah, really cool, right?
Yeah, you like play like there's a hipster character that collects vinyl and like throws albums or something as their attack, and
you play as an unemployed liberal arts grad record collecting hipster.
And it sounds like it's taking some nods from like Earthbound, like that style.
And it's PS1 graphics?
It's
very polygonal.
Okay.
Yes, it doesn't look like a PS1 game, but it's sort of inspired by 3D.
There's also that horror game. Was it back in 1995, which is like a PS1 inspired horror game?
What?
Huh.
Oh,
Yeah,
it's like a survival horror.
Yeah. Yep. Like throwback thing.
It's called Back in.
I'm pretty sure it's called Back in 1995. Yeah.
Write that down. That
Take
sounds
a note.
okay.
Well, that sounds like a good trip overall. Anything else you want to highlight real quick?
No, I thought TGS, like, what was most striking for me is what I opened with, was just that, like, the show didn't blow me away, but the Japanese gaming scene continues to impress me and inspire me as a place that gaming continues to thrive. Developers are doing interesting things, and I'm hopeful that Tokyo Game Show can find some ways to transform itself and really reflect that more.
Cool. It's probably time to reveal that we've been keeping a secret on this podcast. We should probably reveal right now
Oh my God, what is it?
that Matt Cotto's also on this podcast. So we should talk about some games that Cotto's been playing.
Kato was not at TGS.
No,
Yeah,
you were
yeah.
not with
He's
us
busy
at TGS.
playing lots of games, actually.
Hey, you want to touch on Forza 6? It came out last week, 2 weeks ago, but we missed it. How's that looking?
I think for me, I found it a little bit mixed. And by the way, Miller, that was a great account. I'm happy to sit here and listen to you talk about that. So I'm not bothered. I think a lot of thing with Forza 6. There's certainly some sort of make do from Forza 5. A lot of people didn't like when Forza 5 came out, that they didn't feel that there was enough tracks, enough cars, and I think then through some of the microtransactions, people were a little miffed. They thought, well, if you want to increase the number of cars, I guess I have to buy them. Mm-hmm. I mean, when you're talking, I can't remember how many cars Forza 5 has, but when I played it, I felt, there's certainly a lot of cars. There's fast cars, there's slow cars, things like that. That doesn't necessarily instantly bother me like it does some people, but 6, really ups those antes. I think there's something like over 450 cars in 6, and there's a number of tracks is something like 26 tracks, I think, through over a dozen locations. So I think they clearly were like, we want to hit what will pop off the package, or what will really sort of bring attention to the game, and what fans will look at and be like, oh, okay, great, there's more, capital M exclamation point. But I think within that, some of my problems with the game, well, again, it's if you're a Forza fan, or if it's something you were looking at, I want to get sort of a sim based racing experience, you're going to buy that game, and I think you're going to be happy, because again, you're getting the cars, you're getting cars that handle great. They certainly know what they're doing on like the handling side and stuff. So that's always fun.
This is going to be the kind of racing game still where your average arcadey racer is going to come upon like their first tight turn and just blow it, right?
Well, yeah, and all the online races, it's always funny. You go on, all these people who bought the game and they kind of know what it is, or they know what kind of racing it is, and yet the first turn in an online game is always just pure mayhem. And it's just like, you're playing with people who apparently, know what they're doing, and whatever, the level, whatever, and just the whole thing.
It's like a Minnesota exit ramp during the winter, right?
Shot to hell on that first turn. But I think, within that, if you've been somebody who has been playing the franchise for a while, or even if you're thinking, okay, like I haven't bought one of these in a while, I think there's some things like in the career mode and the way it progresses, or even the online, that I think you're kind of scratch your head at. So that
It's just not enough development time. What's going on over there?
I don't know. They Turn 10, well, them as sort of an umbrella for the Forza series, they do the sort of the sim-based Forzas every other year, and then in the intervening year, they've got, I think, another studio that they work with for Forza Horizon. So basically, you're getting a Forza of some stripe every year. Now, I'm not going to claim, I don't know, how that knocks them off track or how that influences what they do, but like for instance, one of the things that kind of got me a little bit was like in your average sort of boring run-of-the-mill, so to speak, sim racer, you have all these low-level cars or whatever, right? So you get your car, and then you might have to re-race some races till you get more money to get your another car, and you're like, I just want to get to the good cars, like your classic Gran Turismo setup where you feel like you're sort of plodding along.
It's nice to earn them. Go from your Honda Civic up until...
Some people like
Ferrari.
that, but that's also sort of like that really linear path is one of those things that people haven't liked. And so you've gotten, as we go on, we've gotten, some of these games have gotten away from that. Like, for instance, there is Project Cars. You're going to say I forgot it for a second, which I may have, but you'll never be able to prove that. Project Cars, for instance, lets you just go and race any series you want. If you want to dive into the Formula One kind of cars or the supercars, you can do that. And it still gives you a career, lets you go back and do, if you want to do the other ones, that are quote lower, you can do those as well. But it says like, hey, we're all adults here. We're not going to restrict you
I love it.
like we have in the past. But Forza 6 goes back to a lot more of a linear path. Yeah. And so, they try to teach us sort of like, these eras of, racing history and stuff. But for me personally, I just didn't like that.
So Project Cars is still the best sim racer this year, you think?
Well, Project Cars has its own problems, which, I think the community has really been kind of bothered about. Some things that, have been buggy and things like that. And when I reviewed it, I had a great time with it. I could see some of its limitations, but I think as time goes on, I think, like I said, some of the community and the way they're supporting that, I don't know, people have questions about that. So I'm being a little guarded in that sense because I don't, I haven't revisited that game since I reviewed it. So
right.
I can't say how it's come along.
Sure. But Forza 6, still pretty good.
Yeah. When you're racing and stuff, it's got night racing, which is, kind of a late addition. Night racing, kind of big whoop, but it's interesting. The weather racing is in the rain. It looks great, and there's some good things
Affects
about
traction?
It definitely affects traction, which, I understand. But just from a pure fun perspective, like when we want to attack the corners, you got this great car. There's all this, torque and horsepower and all those sorts of things. It's understandable, certainly, that your traction, but more also your acceleration is going to be affected as you're coming out of the corners all wet with rain and stuff. But some of those cars, especially the ones with like the high torque and stuff and the acceleration, you really have to tiptoe out to the point where, it's like entering a corner is like you're on stilts and leaving is like you're on tiptoes. It's just sort of, you're totally, kind of pussyfooting this whole experience. And
realistic, but not fun, maybe.
I personally, I didn't have fun with it. I like, the rain. It looks great. It, sounds great. And there's like puddles that kind of sometimes make you hydroplane, which I kind of like. So you're kind of going through and you kind of see what the guy ahead of you does. And
if you follow car tracks, like tire tracks in front of you, do you get extra traction like you would in real life?
I do not know. I don't think that's actually a factor.
Just lost a customer with Tim Curry. He's disgusting.
Not in.
But hey, Kyle, we also want to run down some sports games this year.
Sure.
Because we don't really talk about them too much on the podcast. I'm sorry. But a lot of sports games will come out. And you're a perfect guy for like, hey, give us the highs and lows. What's good this year? What sucks? So I got the impression Madden was better this year. Is that right?
Yeah. I really like Madden. Not to get too much into the scores things. We give it an 8.75. I have some reasons for that. But I really like, playing the game. I think they did some things last year where they were stepping towards us. And this year is kind of the culmination of some of that, even from previous years. So if it's one of those things you haven't played it in a while and you thought like maybe you played it a couple of years ago and you thought, like I can kind of see what they're doing. I think they're fulfilling on some of those things this year. Like one of the things that is a general term I talk about is like variance. And what that means is the things that you see on the field that change from play to play. Because, you know, if you're a sports fan, you're going to play this game a lot. You're going to play seasons, multiple seasons. You're going to play online with friends. And when you start to see the same catches happen in the same locations, or you start to see the same tackles, and you can kind of guess, oh, okay, like I know what's going to happen here, that starts to get to you. And so this game, you know, has less of that. It has more variance, where you're seeing different kinds of tackles.
You can't predict an outcome from an animation that you've seen a few times.
Yeah, he's like, oh, he broke that tackle, or, you know, he jumped and got over it, whereas before, if I were to jump on the sideline, I knew, you know, that he would just go out and those kinds of things. So that's kind of one of those exciting things for sports fans to look forward to.
Oh, good. NHL, how's that doing this year?
You know, I didn't do the review, but I know that they had trouble with their feature set last year, so they're kind of coming into this next new generation. They basically just dumped their feature set, which, you know, again, as a sports gamer, when you're playing these things a lot, you know, the modes are the things that keep you, that can help you go along through the season and keep invested. And so they brought some of that back. You know, it's not like I don't think it's better than they had like in the last generation, but it helps at least give them something that is there, you know, which sounds like damning faint praise. So there it is. But also on the ice when you're playing it, it also, you know, it feels a little better, some little things like that. So I think they're still, you know, maybe, you know, a couple of years away from their sort of breakthrough iteration, but, you know, at least it's sort of getting there.
Okay, cool. And then the big matchup, Pro Evo versus FIFA.
Yes.
No, Tim is actually answering this one. Tim.
Oh, yeah. So as a Metal Gear Solid fan and knowing the Fox engine well enough, I have no idea.
Well, you know, I mean, it's funny because I was thinking back recently. I was like, man, I've played nothing but Konami games this past month. You know what I mean? I was like getting super into Paz and super into Metal Gear. I was like, just, you know.
Enjoy them.
Yeah.
Well, they
While they're here.
Yeah.
Which ironically, actually, Pro Evo is the one AAA franchise that they said that, you know, they will keep
It'll
doing.
make the cut.
Right.
Yeah.
Is it worth? I mean, is it knocking it out of the park? Is it the better soccer game overall?
I think so. I think it's slightly better than FIFA. I like it for kind of the weird reason of just like feel, and I can kind of quantify that. So when you're playing it, you know, I was talking about some of the outcomes for Madden, seeing the same things. I think FIFA, also an EA Sports game, has gotten a little better about that in recent years. But as I play FIFA, there's different goals, there's different things that happen definitely, but some of the ways I can sort of engineer the game, or when I'm dribbling and things like that, some of those moments and like someone's coming up on you and they're trying to steal the ball away, some of those can kind of feel some of the same. And I think that one of the really things I like about Pro Evo in terms of feel is what you feel in control of sort of the situation and what you're doing, you feel. And so I like that when I make certain mistakes, or, you know, I do positive things, I get that feel that, you know, I understand what happened and why I did it. And I feel like those kinds of things are always in my control to affect.
Yeah, definitely.
And so that's one of those nebulous things that I always like about the series. I mean, they haven't always been successful at it in this generation, but, you know, this game is the one that really nails it for them.
And then how's Rocket League looking this year?
I would ask you, I guess, the same thing.
Can you guys just wrap your brains around this with Kato? He does nothing but review soccer games and racing games and car games, and he missed the free window on PSN to download Rocket League.
Well, we got to pitch in.
That's not to say I wouldn't spend money on it. And there's no particular reason I haven't. I went to E3 and I went one match, and I'm going to be honest, full disclosure, Rocket League was on a list of about a dozen games I had to hit in that booth. You know, you all know what it's like at E3.
Right.
So I went and I was, you know, okay, I'm going to get it. I'm going to give it my full attention, which I did. But it was just a game on a list.
Oh, yeah. I was that way before it came out, too.
I mean, we previewed Rocket League and Impulse a few months before launch, and I echo Kato's statements that it was a game that sort of barely made that month's column.
Blood Bowl-esque.
Because it was like, all right, well, cars and
well, at the
soccer.
meeting, at the pre-E3 meeting, it was like, we're doing the Sony booth, and I'm going through a list, and it was like, who's going to take what game? And it's like Rocket League. I'm like, okay, I remember that one. Like, I'll take that one because it's got cars in it. It's like sports-esque, so
It's a generic
I'll
name.
do it. You know, and
It
then
is.
Generic name. It's got like a PlayStation 1 like local multiplayer like concept. Like, I don't have a multi-tap. I can't play Rocket League. But what we got to do is set up like a just like a lunch match and throw you in it.
Indoctrinate Kato.
yeah. And I mean, when I played it at E3, I literally played one match with this other person, and I came around. I was like, yeah, like this is really cool. Like, doesn't have any modes. Doesn't have some of the things you look for. This looks totally just by the books, but playing one match, I was like, oh yeah, this is really, really cool.
Got that feel.
Yeah.
And then it took over the world. Well, cool. Thank you for the sports wrap up. But real quick, before we sign off for this segment, Animal Crossing Happy Home Designer. The 3DS game comes out on Friday.
You're stoked,
Have you,
clearly.
have you seen it in action? Have you played it?
I played it. Yeah, I started it last night. It's not great. there's not
And that's
much
a
in
wrap.
it. But don't be fooled.
And there you go, everybody.
Like,
Thanks for watching.
It's been a couple years since Animal Crossing New Leaf came out, which Tim, I know you really got into.
Yeah, it
for
was
the
my
first time.
first real Animal
How
Crossing
did you
game.
design your home?
Well, you don't design your own home, at least not in the beginning.
Okay.
So you are an employee of Tom Nook's evil corporation, who's the big old raccoon, and you're working in an office. And then you're actually taking in clients who want their homes designed because you're such a great home designer.
Sure.
You then design their homes. So you're not. There's a little town area that you're slowly building out, but it's like 4 buildings. But there's not the Animal Crossing world. You're not running around a world doing anything that you like in Animal Crossing.
Yeah.
You're just designing these homes. So like a
To be fair,
giraffe.
like designing homes in Animal Crossing is fun,
Sure.
but it's way different. Not only in execution, but in just sort of like the meaning of it.
Yes, absolutely. And this feels like
meaning of it?
Just like the meaningfulness of it, I should say.
right. And there was, I remember the first one at least, there was kind of like some subtle, I'm going to butcher this, feng shui type of things. If you design it a certain way, you'll get more points. I forget if that was a New Leaf. I assume it was. And so it seems like they're just kind of taking that idea and running with it. But it feels, this whole game feels like a feature that should have just been in the next Animal Crossing, having more nitty gritty control.
Yeah, because
about
you
how
actually
you lay out your house.
Your character, your mayor or villager or whatever in Animal Crossing had to physically, hey, I got this new, I got a pipe from Mario. Okay, you have to like physically push it over there with your character.
and now you can use the stylus.
yeah,
And you have more customization options. And like, unlike Animal Crossing, you don't have to go to the store to get these pieces. It just gives you all the different tools and items that you can throw on your house.
And so without like some sort of social, component or some sort of larger world of like, this is the village, I mean, then it's just
That's
like,
exactly right, Kato. Then it's just
but there's another factor of it because it might be fun if it was like, hey, guy says, what's one of the examples of something someone asked
he
for?
says, I want a forest of books for my house.
Okay, so you know what? I think I remember that one because my girlfriend played some of it.
Oh, okay.
And so she made like this beautiful library, just tons, like lined with shelves, and here's a nice little reading area, and nice wood floors, and she put exquisite care into that, and the guy loved it. It turned out he loved it. But I saw Jeff Cork show me something the other day on it, who reviewed it. He booted it up. First thing's like, hey, this is what I'm going for in my style. Just go wild with my home. Okay. And then Cork goes immediately into the menu and says, job's done. And then it's just like this slow pan around this empty room and just happy faces. And
Yep.
it's like, oh my God, you've done it. This is my dream
It's true.
house.
Literally, they'll request something. There'll be like 3 boxes in the house of like kind of objects to get you started. You can walk over to the boxes, literally open them, pull out like a grandfather clock, put it where the box was, and then just turn around and walk back to the person and be like, well, give me my money. I'm an interior designer.
You're a genius.
Exactly. Well, that's what's great about Animal Crossing is it's so positive and they're just constantly exploding and applauding everything you do. But it gets crazy because like, a dumb frog will come into town and be like, I really want a stylish space for my home. And so one of the pieces that they start you off with is like this glass wall, just like this weird glass wall in the middle of a home. It's
I
very
can't
stylish.
believe, by the way, how much we're talking about this game right
Oh,
now.
we're gonna go so much deeper. So all I did is I took that glass wall and I shoved it against the doorway so you couldn't get into this house.
That's modern.
And then said like, what do you think of this? Oh, it's brilliant.
Yeah.
This
Yes.
home that I can't get out of now.
So are you sure that it's not some sort of, meta trolling on like some sort of existentialist or nihilistic
Pretty sure it is.
philosophy?
So that's what that frog went into for a little while. I just kind of skipped
His ears started bleeding.
Yeah.
But basically, it seems like the end of the day is like there are no stakes. And if you're okay
Yeah.
with no stakes, just like, hey, make a cute little cartoon house, cool. But otherwise, if you're in it for any sort of progression or like meaningful gameplay, it's not there.
Right. It's basically an Animal Crossing doodle app is how I would describe it. So run, don't walk to your nearest store. Really pick up this hot baby. All right, cool. Anything else you guys want to hit on real quick before we go to emails?
I think we got it.
Cool. Well, stay tuned for emails.
Welcome back to the Game Informer Show. We've got some emails here. If you want to send an email to the Game Informer Show to have us read, answer a question, you got some correction for us, something we said something stupid, which can happen from time to time, or you have some more info on something we were talking about, we love getting emails. It's podcast@gameinformer.com. Every week we choose an email of the week. We'll send you a little thank you in the mail after we violate your privacy and ask for your personal address.
It's a secret gift, but this week it's a mound of dirt from
correct.
Tim Turry's backyard.
Give it away. Come on.
Wow.
All right. So first email is from Ronaldo. So, hi, GI guys. I have recently been caught up in the excitement surrounding the forthcoming release of Fallout 4. I played through Fallout 3 earlier this year to alleviate some of the hype. After finishing it, alleviating hype. Like that.
I love that idea.
Just like there's like a pressure that you have to find the pressure valve.
Got that off my chest.
After finishing it, I realized that was roughly the 15th time I'd played through it and had a near equal amount of fun each time. My question for you is, are there any games that you guys go back to on a regular basis and play to completion? Ronaldo.
Wow, Ronaldo. Not as impressive as that.
I mean, it's funny because like I've heard, not maybe 15 is a specific number, but I've heard people like when people talk about Fallout 3, they talk about like, well, which playthrough do you want to hear about? Because I've played it like 5-6 times.
Well, look at you. You're a freakazoid when it comes to Resident Evil. You play that every month.
I mean, I guess yeah. Like my answer would be like Resident Evil 1, probably the GameCube remake, or before that, like Metal Gear Solid. Mm-hmm. I'd probably play Resident Evil and Metal Gear Solid 1 like every year. Like it'd be my annual 2 games. And I think I'm going to play, I think Ben and I, we've been talking about playing through Metal Gear Solid 1 just for fun to wrap up the Phantom Pain.
Yeah. Might be tied to something we're doing in the future for the podcast, which will be exciting.
Ooh, maybe.
But yeah, I'm with you. Like I have those games where it's like, I want to play Shadow of the Colossus every year. Every year, remind myself, watch The British Office all the way through again and play Shadow of the Colossus. Every year, you'll be a better person.
And you've still never played Shadow of the Colossus.
No. I played through it maybe like 3 or 4 times, but like I really should do that. But I think mine, this is a lazy answer compared to those like narrative focused things, but does WarioWare on GBA count? I have it like I'm a 3DS ambassador program, but like I will always go back to WarioWare and constantly be reminded of how amazing that first game is.
Yeah, that's a good example.
That's my lazy answer. You guys got a good one?
I've played Super Metroid a lot of times.
Okay.
And although I don't know that you'd ever really go back and play it to completion, Rock Band is a game like that's sort of they're really all the same to me. They sort of meld together. I guess these days I play Rock Band 3 when I need to. Rock Band 4 is coming soon.
Right.
But like there's times I definitely like get in a mood to play Rock Band.
Solo?
Yeah, I play solo.
How much do you cry when you play Rock Band solo?
It's really sad.
It's hard to cry through a guitar solo, man, when you're shredding away on a Rush song.
Yeah, it's good.
That's nice. Do you always go guitar when you're playing by yourself?
No, I play a lot of drums too.
That's a good choice. When you're playing by yourself, it's a good choice.
Yeah. You feel like you're really nailing those
Also,
beats.
when you screw up drums in a group, everyone suffers. So,
well, I wouldn't know about that.
Because he has no friends.
Yeah, I thought you were going the self-deprecating route. You're going the good drummer route. Okay, got it.
I historically don't play games, replay games to completion a whole lot, but actually in this sort of generation recently I've gone back to a lot more is the Pinball FX series.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, just for scores, or there's always a new table. So that's one of those definitely where it's just, it's not an experience like I play anywhere else, so it's like, oh yeah, let's go, play some pinball. So I definitely return to that.
Mario Galaxy is one for me. If I'm ever feeling a little blue, Mario Galaxy puts me in a great mood. But
nice.
Only the first one, though.
That's right. No.
Second one sends him into a blind race.
It's terrible. All right, the next one is from Brian from Northern Virginia. So,
Miller, your home country.
It is my home country.
God's country.
I grew up around there.
There we go.
Well, maybe you'll recognize Brian from this email.
We all know each other.
Dear Game Informer Show, I remember when I played Ninja Gaiden Black, which can be argued that it's a very difficult game for the original Xbox, that I could execute some ridiculous moves while still being able to perform multiple counters and keeping the combo counter up. I remember being able to fight bosses in the game without taking damage because I dodged, evaded at just the right moment. So I guess my burning question for you this week is, I was wondering, especially the senior members,
Why do you say it like
I
that?
don't know. Have you guys noticed your reaction timing to be slower as you have gotten to be a more mature
Hey, now.
gamer?
Hey, no.
So that's pretty much it. That's from Brian. So
Are we dying?
well, are we? Yeah, are we dying? Are the synapses in our brains, are they weakening?
I mean, there's
ahead.
the scientific answer is absolutely right. But I think it's more pronounced at the highest levels of play than it is at the levels of play that at least I count myself at. Right, like first person shooters that I play now. I know I'm slower than some of the other people who are playing, but it really doesn't make as much of a difference as it would if I was playing like MLG guys.
Right.
Well, the other thing too, Brian, I'd say is, being, we're all gamers who played a lot of games and stuff, and use the old sports cliche, it's like the game sort of slows down. So, you play any game, you sort of, you can kind of tell what's next, right? I mean, like in a platformer, you can kind of get a feel for how the flow might be, or, when, I'm sure in a horror game, when the surprise might come out, or if, I'm playing a sports game, I certainly, whether it's a play or this or that or whatever, you can kind of see ahead a little bit because you've played so many of them that you just sort of, you have a little bit of a jump. So that's what I would say, Brian.
Makes up for the reflexes.
Yeah, so there.
I think, I was
We rely on our smarts in our old age.
That's right.
I would get into my head sometimes, especially when playing something like Dark Souls, where it's just like, oh man, like, is it going to get to a point where a game's going to be so hard that I just don't feel like I can keep up? And it's fun and reassuring when I can play a game like that and be like, all right, I have these reflexes that are still here. And, I'm just going to be 30 this year, so it's not like I'm an old man by like pro gaming standards, but or I'll be playing something like Super Meat Boy and still have that, or I'll even play something that I'm not super familiar with, like when I was getting to know Street Fighter and settling into that. I'm like, actually, now that I know and understand parts of the game, I'm executing combos better than when I just tried, just using raw reflex and memorization. I'm doing better now. The things I do notice, I remember I brought home Mortal Kombat, the most recent one, and was sitting down with it and playing with the controller and like played for like 15 minutes. I'm like, my wrist kills. And I don't know, that doesn't happen a lot with me, but it stood out. So
Yeah, interesting.
that's Brian asking if we are all dying.
Thanks, Brian.
We are all dying.
Maybe one day. So this one is a quick aside from Lee. He wants to clarify something about the Fulton system. It was available in the 90s. It was installed on MC-130 aircraft. It could not pick up much weight, but when used on people, it killed them or broke their backs. Your body went from
But they're all having a good time.
your body went from sitting still on the ground to being pulled through the air at aircraft speed in a split second. They were on jets. I guess they have helicopters in Metal Gear, but I remember the original ones were jets. That
Why
would
wouldn't
pick
they
up
make
people.
the cord super duper elasticy so that like it would slowly pull you off the ground?
Well, this thing is, if it was elastic, once you got going, how do you stop?
Yeah, you spring
Question
into
on that
the.
one.
Yeah, you should be an engineer, Ben, for the military specifically. If you can find a video, they are a blast to watch. I'm assuming not the ones where people break their backs.
Those are hilarious.
Hey, he didn't die though, right?
Check out my YouTube channel.
Yeah, it's basically set to America's Funniest Home Video theme, and there's slide whistles involved and cat screeching. I got to see them pick up practice loads several times. Amazing to see. That's from Lee. So a quick aside. This one is a much more serious note. This one's from Tony from Rockdale, Illinois. Hey guys, I'm a huge fan of Metal Gear Solid and the art that surrounds the franchise. I love the art enough that when I was thinking about starting a sleeve, Yoji Shinkawa's Metal Gear Solid art was first in line. I was wondering, do any of you have video game inspired tattoos? Or what games would you choose if you were to get a video game inspired tattoo?
Tattoos freak me out.
What the permanence or the act of getting it?
Permanence. I'm the kind of guy who when I get cut or something, I always just worry like, oh, this is gonna scar and it's gonna drive me insane because like I want a very clean, natural body, and having like a scar on me freaks me out mentally. It's the idea of like adding something like a tattoo on. I think I would like scratch it off within a week. I couldn't take it.
Scratch it off.
But to answer his question, I'm gonna go
awfully
with
disturbing image.
Yeah, I'm gonna go with like the Jurassic Park logo.
Okay.
I thought about that, getting that as a kid, like a JP, like within the island outline on my leg. But it's not video game related in the least.
It's still a good one.
I don't know.
Everyone's got like, I'm from Minnesota and I have an outline of the state. But if you had, I have a Nublar and
apologize to my friend Grant, who has an outline of the state and listens to this podcast.
Oh, okay. Well, I mean, I've known plenty of people that have that, but I think it's fun to. Hello, Grant. You're a nice guy. I like you. Let's go climbing.
Miller, is your body covered in tattoos?
No,
What's going on under there?
It may not surprise you to learn that I don't have any tattoos. What would I get as a tattoo? I don't know if there. I mean, I honestly think that I don't know that there's any games that I have that profound of a connection to.
Right.
That I would want to.
That wouldn't be like garish on a human being in some ways too. Like,
I mean, like there's games I love a lot, but that I don't necessarily have that connection. Like it somehow speaks to me personally.
Here's what you get, Miller. I got it. I'm going to pitch you on this tattoo, and then if you agree to it, we're going to bring in the artist right now. He's waiting outside.
He's there now.
Here's what you get. You get
I see him.
You get like black cylinders on your knuckles, and then kind of like out on your fingers like this, so that you can do, what is this, the rock on symbol, and it'll make the Destiny logo like perfectly, because like the symbol, it kind of looks like fingers. So if you just make that symbol on your hand, and then you could.
Ben, that's a great idea.
All right, bring them on in then. Let's
Come
go.
on. Sound effect. That's a good one. Kato, so how many gaming tattoos do you have?
How many?
It's hard to count. Probably.
One for each you've played, right? Just the tallies.
Yeah, it's all the Madden years, right? No, I'm not a tattoo guy at all, and I'm kind of with Miller. I don't know that I would do that.
Not that there's anything wrong with that.
Right.
I just not my thing. Not my thing at all.
There's definitely nothing wrong with that. And like now I'm realizing that I don't even have like a video game example like Ben, who went the Jurassic Park route. I was thinking that like if you had to put a gun to my head and say like you're getting a tattoo today.
A tattoo of a gun on your head?
And Ben and I talked about this because Ben, you and Dan Riker, when we went to Mexico recently on a vacation, we're just like, we're going to go and get you a tattoo.
What did that tattoo say, Tim?
What if we were going to get you a tattoo? What would you go with? Like if I paid you for anything? And it seemed like you guys were going to make good on it. But
yeah.
I was going to go for like, if I ever had to get one tattoo, it would be like cartoon I love you, mom. Like I heart mom. Like just super cartoon, like biker, tough guy, like I heart mom thing.
That's good.
Me with an arrow through it. So.
A friend of mine had something like that where he had a dream in high school that he had a tattoo on his butt that said, "Have a nice day," in, as he put it, Christmas greetings font. And then that week he went and got the tattoo on his butt.
That's great.
Cheeks. Have a nice day.
It spoke to him.
It's so stupid.
That's great. I've seen the tattoo of like someone will have like this is gaudy now I think about it. It's kind of clever. The John McClane one where it's like the gun strapped to the back of the neck or the back of the back.
Right.
The back of his human being.
The neck of his back?
With the sort of like Happy Holidays sticker stuff because it was, that's how we snuck the gun to kill Hans Gruber. All right. So that was a good one. This next one is from Andy from Hopkins, Minnesota. Hey guys, love all the work you do at the GI podcast, all your videos, great articles, etc. Thank you. That was him saying thank you, but I'm saying thank you as well. I'm in similar age to most of you at GI, almost 30. I consider gaming to be one of my main hobbies. When I'm not at my job, I don't have any real life commitments. I sneak in as much gaming as I can. I found a good balance between life and games, but it got me thinking about all of you. I know that playing, researching, discussing games is a huge part of your jobs. And what are all of your hobbies outside of work and gaming? I've been reading, following, watching GI for years, and it's fun to get glimpses of your lives and just what you do outside of work. So more kind words. That's from Andy. So.
I play video games outside of work.
Typically, it's how that works.
Yeah, I do a lot of that too. And when I'm not doing that, I'm thinking about, God, when's the next free hour I have to play some video games? And that's not even exaggerating.
Well, is it a hobby technically just listening to podcasts and staring blankly out a window?
Because you do a lot of that.
That's basically my life outside of work.
Also, your
I've
life,
never met someone who listens to as many podcasts.
Also,
or stared out as many windows.
Ben Hansen, you just said that's your life outside of work. I want to point out that it's also your life within work, because 9 times out of 10, if I want to get your attention from shouting across the bullpen, you have to inevitably touch your phone for some reason and pause a podcast.
Only when I'm color correcting videos, stuff like that, guys.
Seems to be like
Andy
you're doing
doesn't
a
listen
lot.
to this, does he?
Yeah. So anyway, that's your hobby then? You
I
say
don't-
like your
I-
main go-to?
I don't know. I don't think I have any big hobbies outside of this crap.
You don't like watching old Twilight Zone episodes?
That doesn't count as watching Netflix. Is that a hobby?
I like to catch up on classic
You climb
films
mountains and crap. Like you got real
That's
hobbies.
not true. Dan Reichert.
Sorry, you're right.
Tapping
That
into
was Dan Reichert.
there. Yeah. I go climbing. I go to the climbing gym. That's like my go-to like exercise thing. And other than that, that's like my go-to. Other things come and go.
Biking. I like biking a lot.
Do you like that? Huh?
I'll count that as a hobby.
Even beyond to and from work.
Yeah.
I feel like
I studied music in college, and that's still a big part of my life, and I would count that as a hobby.
Definitely.
I still play piano and guitar and that kind of good stuff. I collect toys,
Yeah.
which is anybody who's been to my desk can recognize. Although I don't know if is collecting like a hobby.
It is.
Is
It
a
definitely
thing?
is.
Do
If it's something that you
it is.
think about, put like energy and time and money into, and have something to show for it, I think it's definitely.
Miller's desk just looks like that scene in E.T. where it's just a bunch of stuffed animals and his
Yeah.
face is just in the middle.
Well, and
Except he's-
Drew Barrymore.
that's right. And he's typing on a keyboard
There's a
while
Drew
in that.
Barrymore shrine at my desk, which is weird.
That's
I
right.
guess, but
I'm into it.
so yeah, that's a thing. Comics. Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
I just got back just before we were recording this. I went to go get comics.
Oh, we got the new intern team on now. Joseph, Marcus, and Parker. You'll have to
we got
do
to
your
take them out to
initiative.
their.
Yeah.
We have a couple great comic stores here in Minneapolis, and I go to one of those every Wednesday.
Source is one of them
in Roseville.
Yeah,
yeah, in Roseville.
good place. You also, I'd say Dungeons and Dragons is something.
Yeah, for sure. I guess. I mean, I kind of count that in some ways as part of my gaming hobby, but it is distinct. Is that I've got to. In addition to all the video game stuff I do, I spend a lot of time on tabletop stuff, including running sessions of various role-playing games, the most familiar of which is D&D.
And you'll notice that from listening to this, that Miller is incredibly good with his words. It turns out he's an amazing dungeon master.
Well,
So-
imagine
Yeah.
being the most articulate person at GI, and then when he's a dungeon master, he's just fumbling over himself. Has no idea what's happening.
In many ways, I think running D&D sessions is my oldest hobby. I started that when I was
The oldest profession.
the oldest profession of the nerd. I started DMing when I was like 7 years old.
yeah, you got a lot of experience.
I had an older brother who played, who doesn't play anymore, but he instilled an enthusiasm for the game in me, and I started running sessions for my friends, and have met some of my closest friends over 30 some years.
Like Barrymore the troll.
Yeah, just like that. Just exactly
Barrymore,
like
did
that.
you just pull off the top of your head?
Um,
It's good.
So yeah, those are some of the things I get up to.
Cool.
I like to play hockey, listen to music, and all seriousness. Certainly play video games. Watch sports, which can be tough because if it's like hockey season's going on or whatever, there's a game a night or whatever. So I watch that. I'll try to DVR it, watch some of that, and then it's like, oh, how do you fit in games?
Right.
Like with anything, it's like
Yeah.
I want to read a book, watch a movie, catch up on whatever the wild game is, and then somehow try to find time for games or whatever.
Have you tried the second screen experience with that yet? You got
Nah.
for you?
I just kind of watch it or whatever. But
You
yeah, I
really
mean,
play hockey though. Like
Yeah,
you're
I
like
play hockey a
on
couple
a
times a
team
week.
and
Yeah,
playing
that's-
everything, which
it's a
I'm
lot of
always
fun,
impressed
which is
by.
great because it doubles for exercise
Yeah,
or whatever.
yeah.
But it's a lot of
Outdoor,
fun, but
indoor. What are we talking here?
It's indoor. It's a rink, arena and stuff.
That's
That's
cool.
awesome.
Yeah.
I've always wanted to get back into hockey in like a serious adult way. Adult
Yeah,
hockey leagues. Yeah,
please.
It'd be fun. I guess, but like speaking for all of us, we all like keep up on shows and stuff. Are talking about like
We're humans.
yeah, exactly. I guess that's what qualifies. That's not even a hobby. Is like
Right.
You're
Well,
just
it's
a
always
monster if you don't watch modern
Which
television.
is weird though when you meet those people when you ask them like, oh, you like what movies have you seen recently? And they're like, yeah, I don't really like movies. Not in like a, I like watch TV and maybe some people these days, as times have gone on, TVs have kind of replaced movies. But even then, they're just like there's people who don't really get into music and they've got like 5 CDs in their collection, or they don't really watch movies, and you're sort of naming things. It's always weird when that's not like you said, just sort of a fact of life, so to speak, for some people, like
Yeah.
music or watching movies. It
I'm
always
with you.
weirds me out. I'm like, I don't know who you are, and I probably don't want to know you. So
On that note, I'm one of those people with music. Like movies, I cannot wrap my mind around not staying up to date and stuff like that. But then like music, it's like, oh yeah, I guess I'm the most passive person ever. Like, yeah, I have some music I like listening every once in a while. But
why
like,
you listen to podcasts, I guess.
yeah, exactly. I never have time to listen to music. I'm never in a mood where it's like I'd rather listen
But
to
you
music
have
than
time
podcasts.
to listen to music.
Well, not with all these podcasts.
Right.
Anytime that
That's
you
my
could be
point.
listening to music, you could probably listen to a podcast.
Why not be learning something?
And
Yeah.
I've fallen into the same trap as well, where it's just like, man, I used to listen to music on the commute all the time, and now it's like, oh, I got these podcasts to keep up with, and my new music intake has gone down a ton since I started.
But thank God you're
this
still
podcast.
listening to Mario 64 soundtrack, 10-hour loop.
Well, that
throughout
doesn't.
the workday.
I can't write while listening to anyone sing or talk.
Right.
So I have to listen to something that doesn't have any sort of vocals to it.
Ba, ba.
And it turns out it's highly motivating.
All right, each their own.
Anyway, that's the gist of that. So I thought that was a fun question. But I'm going to give the email of the week to Brian, who made us question our mortality and our decaying bodies. Because I like thinking about how things have changed from when you were younger and took things for granted regarding video games, and then they've changed a little bit. I don't know. So that is going to be the email of the week. So we'll send Brian something, a little nice thank you. And if you have an email that you want to send our way, it's podcast@GameInformer.com.
We're accepting anything and everything.
Before we move on,
I don't think you want to say that. Ben.
Nope, absolutely
no,
everything.
yeah.
Right to Miller at
including
GameInformer.com.
harsh criticism. But before we move on, do we want to just do a quick shout out to some of the coolest things on coolest stuff on the website right now?
Yeah, the plug section, which we keep forgetting to do, but we should do more often. Real quickly, Mike Futter, our news guy, who hasn't been on the rebooted podcast quite yet, he just played through some of the opening campaign levels in Halo 5. And so we have a big preview up on the site right now, give you an idea of what to expect from that if you're into that sort of thing. Miller,
game
what do you
sounds
got?
cool.
Yeah, I'm excited for it.
I would point people toward my colleague who traveled with me, Kim Wallace, did an awesome write-up of the games we want to see localized coming from Tokyo Game
Which
Show.
is really helpful for me because I clicked on that story because I hear about so many games that might sound interesting, not sound interesting from Japan, but it's that nebulous thing of I don't know which ones even have a chance of coming over. So having that list of like, okay, these haven't been announced yet.
Yeah, we talked earlier in the show about Neo. That's I think is one of the ones she talks about. One of the ones I'm most excited about that I was happy she included was a game called 13 Sentinels Aegis Rim, which is not a great name, but it is from Vanillaware, which is awesome.
Oh, yeah.
They're the guys who made Odin Sphere and Dragon's Crown more recently.
Gorgeous games.
Really cool looking game. Their new one has sort of like modern day Japan mecha kind of qualities to it.
All right.
And she goes through a bunch of other titles that you will read about and be like, yes, I would like people to bring that over to North America.
Yes.
So check it out.
I would point people towards the Chronicles series. We do it for a couple different games or whatever, but it's kind of nice because it's them, the guys here playing through a game, but it's not just like Test Chamber. Nothing wrong with Test Chamber, by the way, but it's more than just a quick slice. But it's not like some sort of walkthrough about like, okay, here you find the whatever. It's and it's a series too, so as it goes on in different episodes, you can kind of take in the whole game, and it's kind of like a long piece.
Yeah.
So definitely check those out. And if you haven't seen, if you've been watching up to this point, don't feel bad about going in and just watching from the beginning or
Yeah,
whatever.
it's Dark Souls,
Jump in.
Shenmue.
Yeah. We got Dan Tack and I are doing Dark Souls, and Kyle Hilliard and Reiner are doing Shenmue. I think we're both groups are going to move through all of it. So thanks for the shout on that. Other than that, we did do a episode. I don't think we labeled it anything, but it's just we played community levels of Super Mario Maker.
Oh, okay.
And had a lot of fun with that. And
How'd
something
you
we
get
want to do, but it hasn't like set the world on fire yet, but we might have played your levels if you're listening to this and sent something in. So go and check that out. That can be kind of fun to see someone else play your levels. It's a trip. I've watched my friends play them, and we played a ton of them. Played about like an hour's worth, and we didn't dwell on any for too long. A really good spread, some impressive stuff in there, and we have the codes in there. So if you want to play it too, you can check out the levels and check it out. And if we get enough people that are interested in that, maybe we'll do it again.
You should send that over to YouTube, by the way. I don't think it's popped up over there yet.
Oh yeah, I'll let Kyle know.
It'll be on YouTube by the time you hear this.
Sweet.
Cool. All right. Well, is that the oot for the whole email section?
That's the oot.
It's oot. All right. Well, stay
We're ooted
tuned
here. Yeah.
Stay tuned for the big interview with Greg Miller coming up next. Greg Miller, thank you so much for joining us on the Game Informer Show.
Thank you guys so much for having me. Please, it's a pleasure.
This is fantastic.
This all comes about from a tweet we sent from like the Game Informer account, like, hey, do you want more developer interviews on the Game Informer Show podcast? And someone immediately was like, Greg Miller, please.
And you're like, he's not a developer. I'm like, I'll do it.
Well, Greg's kind enough to immediately send me a tweet. Yep, I'm in. Sure. So I think, God bless you, Greg.
Well, it's one of those things we don't get to work together enough. I mean, I didn't meet Tim until an Insomniac dinner, and it was like, oh, man, you're awesome. Why haven't I ever hung out with you before?
Likewise, it was just like, oh, where have they been keeping this guy? And now we all can't get enough of you.
Oh,
yeah, no, it's one of those. I really hope Tim moves to San Francisco one day, and then Dan did. And I was like, God dang it.
You got the wrong one. You got Dan Reichert.
God dang it. And then Jim Riley shows back up like a bad penny. I can't get away from the
What's
bad
going
ones.
on?
yeah, sorry. We ship our worst over to San Francisco.
That's
I really
right.
apologize about that, Greg. So this interview, let's just talk a little bit. I'm fascinated by your hustle, Greg Miller, if I can say that.
Thank you.
Yeah, the motor in you is something else, and it has really propelled you rising through the ranks from IGN now to launching your whole new thing with Kind of Funny with your friends. And it's like the 1-year anniversary of that whole experience, right?
Yeah, like that was the funny thing. We woke up on September 15th and a bunch of people were wishing us happy anniversary. And we're like, what? Oh, right. Like we only rebranded as Kind of Funny a year ago. And it's like that weird thing Nick kept talking about it on the day, right? It's kind of like when you're dating somebody and then you marry them. And it's like you kind of give up on the anniversary of your first date and then there's like the marriage date. So we married Kind of Funny on January 5th when we quit IGN. But like, yeah, I guess we do have an anniversary on the 15th as well. But yeah, it's been such a weird, crazy year, from that point forward that all seems like yesterday. And then here you are, we're still trying to do more stuff.
Yeah, you want to just talk about that experience, maybe a year in retrospect, what it was like for you, what prompted the change?
Sure. I mean, it actually starts 3 years ago, right? When I'd gotten Up at Noon. And so, they give me Up at Noon. They're launching this new YouTube channel called Start, which is in partnership with YouTube, da-da-da-da-da. And I'm hosting this, daily show knockoff fun thing about video games and having a great time with it. And about 6 months in, they're like, you should go to VidCon. And I was like, well, what's VidCon? And they're like, VidCon, and I guess, no, this is 3 years ago and change. VidCon is like, GDC, but for YouTube. So you go there as a creator and you learn from other creators in panels and speeches and stuff. And there's fans around, but it's really about getting better at YouTube. And I remember going, I know YouTube. I've been on IGN for 5 years at this point. I know online video. I
We
don't need to
technically
go.
post over there, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Our stuff gets syndicated. It's fine. We have subscribers, right? And so Colin always says that I left the house and I was like, whatever, going to this stupid thing. And then I came back like the apostles with the Holy Spirit above their head. And I was just like preaching the word of God. And I was like, Colin, you understand there's this and there's an audience. And it's exactly what I've been looking for. Because I was struggling looking for a creative outlet. Because I loved IGN and I loved the job, obviously. But I'm sure you guys know it follows you home and it never stops. And so it was like, you'd go to bed and you like look at your Twitter just as you're about to pass out. And it's like, oh, wait, Cliffy B said something. Back up. Got to do this and publish this page. And they've announced something about Uncharted or da-da-da. And so I was only doing IGN stuff. So I felt like I needed to start making my own content of some kind. I didn't know what that meant. I looked into comics. I looked into children's books. But then when I went to VidCon, I was like, oh, YouTube. That's what it's going to be. And so I started into YouTube and, I grabbed Colin. I'm like, I'm going to interview you in this show because you say crazy stuff. And then Nick and Tim were like, we'll film it. I'm like, great. And then slowly over that 3-year process, it began to become a thing. Until finally we were like, all right, we have to have a real conversation because we're having more fun doing this than we are at work. And then can we make this into a career? Can we make this our jobs? And we sat down and Nick put down all the numbers. And then it was like, well, what's everybody's numbers? Like, what is your rent? What is this? And we looked at how much money we'd actually have to make. And we were like, we are nowhere near that on AdSense. So no, we're not going to do this. We'll stick around IG another year and a half and figure it out. But what happened is about a month later, we found out about Patreon. We ran into those guys at the next VidCon, and they were big Colin and Greg fans. They knew us, they knew our work. And when we explained what we were, and we were going to rebrand as Kind of Funny, because forever we had just been the Game Over Greggy channel, and that is weird for Nick, Tim, and Colin to be like, I work on the Game Over Greggy channel. He's my overlord and dictator. Like they wanted to make their own shows that didn't feature me, and it wouldn't make sense on that. So when we explained that, the rebranding, we launched Kind of Funny. It's one of those things where everything we've done with Kind of Funny are these little steps, these little things. And it's not until you look back, you're like, oh, crap, like, that was a huge thing. Like, today, actually, an hour and change, we just announced that Colin and I are coming back with another PlayStation podcast because our fans have been asking since we left, just do a PlayStation podcast.
Which has an amazing name, by the way. I want to make sure you know how good it is.
I don't know.
It is. Can I do
Please.
It's P.S. I Love You.
How is that not taken?
I know.
God damn
Well, it's
it,
one of
that's
those. Last night I was looking at the font. So like, my story to put a pin in that one is that. So last night it was one of those things where Nick's been working on this graphics package and announcement video forever, and meanwhile Colin and Tim and I are just doing the daily work and worrying about this and TwitchCon and da da da. And last night I sat there and watched the final version of it, and I started smiling, and I'm like, oh right, this is gonna be a thing tomorrow. Tomorrow, this is going to go out and this is going to be a big deal for people. I totally forgotten that it would be a big deal. You know what I mean? Like, it's those, we're so caught up in it that you don't get a chance to look back and be like, this was awesome. Right. But yeah, P.S. I Love You, it popped up yesterday, and the SoundCloud link is like soundcloud.com/P.S. I Love You XOXO, because that's like the full name. And I looked at Tim, I'm like, do we have to keep the XOXO? And he's like, well, yeah, that's what's not taken. And I was like, oh, okay. And like,
gotcha.
if you iTunes it now, somebody on Twitter screen capped it right before this. If you just put in P.S. I Love You, it's some like thing in crazy Russian about religion. like, all right.
Perfect.
Hopefully people don't think that's what it is, but we'll be all right.
So it's interesting you talk about back during the IGN days, you just having your life consumed by this content and you can't get away from it. But it seems like, aren't you building back up to that now? I mean, eventually you're going to get to the point where you're just streaming 24/7?
Yes. Oh
okay.
My God. I have never been as stupid as when, like, probably in December, last year, obviously, December, when we're leading up, like, people knew we were leaving, so we're just openly talking about it, but it wasn't announced yet. And I was like, it's going to be so great, man. We're going to stream some game. We'll stream Colin and Greg Live in the morning, our talk show on Twitch, then maybe stream some games in the afternoon. I'll probably catch a nap. And then, like, it's just been eye bleed work since then. You know? Like, it's so much more work than it was, but the difference, right, is like, at IGN, you'd be working nonstop, and then maybe sales teams is getting the bonus for that, or this, that, or the, like, this is ours. It's 5 people, right? Like, I know everything that I'm doing here, and it's mine, and we understand that it's ours, and we understand what we're building, especially with the community, right? Like, for us, for Colin and I in particular, I don't know if you caught it, but like, our final Beyond is us just sobbing like babies. You know what I mean? And it's like a death in the family, because I'd been on that show since episode 1. I had built this thing, this community, and I always anticipated leaving it, right? But like, actually doing that hurt so bad, because like, it was mine, but it wasn't. You know what I mean? I built that for IGN. That's IGN's thing. That makes sense. I'm not saying in any way, shape, or form I owned it or anything. So to leave all that behind, that was so painful. And that was totally one of those things of like, let's never do that again. You know what I mean? Like, if we have such an awesome community. So many of them have come with us to Kind of Funny, and still, you know, obviously go to you guys, go to IGN, go to GameSpot, everybody else. That I don't want to ever build something for somebody else that I have to leave at one point like that. I want to make sure everybody's with me as long as I want them to be.
How inspired were you by Gertzman's move back in the day with GameSpot?
It's one of those things. It wasn't until we were in the thick of it where I was like, oh, right. Like, what a great, because I don't know if you guys remember when it was happening. Like, that was such a weird time. I remember when that happened and he, you know, was fired, and then like IGN calling a meeting and bringing everyone together and being like, hey guys, this is what's happening over at GameSpot. That's not what's happening here. Like, don't worry about that kind of stuff. We wouldn't do, you know what I mean? It was like such a weird thing. And then for them to start up Giant Bomb, I remember being like, oh yeah, good for them. But I'm like, will that work? Is that like a thing that actually happens right now? Because I was so young and stupid. And not to mention that they were so far ahead of the curve. You know what I mean? Like, I talk about all the time with us in particular is the fact that like, if we would have launched Kind of Funny 6 months before or 6 months after, it would have been completely different in terms of how much money we would have raised, how much people would have known about us or cared about us. Like, we went really, as the zeitgeist was, everybody kind of wrapped their head around like, I can't believe the number of people coming to me and say, I love your content. And it's like, man, I didn't start thinking about what we did as content and being a content creator until probably that first VidCon, and not really thinking about it till the second VidCon. You know what I mean? Like, for me, that's still such a new term, but to see our fans, our consumers coming to us and saying that they get what it is and they understand what the internet is right now. Whereas before, if you try to put up a paywall, right, IGN Insider, you guys are money hungry jerks. You know what I mean? Like, there's such a different barometer for what's happening.
Yeah, definitely.
Well, people love giving, you know, supporting someone directly is what it turns out to be. And there's a face there, and they understand like, oh, hey, you know, you're able to get this video equipment or this set or something because of me. Yeah, that's a great feeling.
Yeah, did you ever think? Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
Oh, that's, you know, that's what our whole thing is, right? Is like, not probably just my whole thing with every time I've ever been on a podcast is how open I am, right? That everybody's along with my ride. So it's like, you know, when I started at IGN, sure, it was a lot of me talking about PlayStation and PSP, but then like all of a sudden I'm getting divorced, then I'm back to talking about games and my dog, and then all of a sudden I'm having cancer, and then, you know what I mean? Like, people have been with me my entire life. They know my story. So now it is that thing of like, now there's like I mean, we were always transparent at IGN, but even then, right? Like you guys know, you have bosses, so you can't just say unfiltered what your message is. You have to be like, okay, what is the company presenting? Whereas now it is like, all right, yeah, like we need a new camera, or we bought new mics because you wanted them. So now the audio quality might be shitty for the first week because we're trying to figure out these mics. You know what I mean? Like there's no buffer we get to say, and you are literally in the room for the ride with us.
Yeah, absolutely. Do you ever think about when you retire, and Tim, I think about this a lot with us, just going back and watching all this old content and basically getting to relive your life in a very surreal way?
It's one of those, I think we move too quick and we're too busy to actually have a grasp on that. But there was yesterday, some kid tweeted me and he's like, yeah, I'm going back and listening to all the podcast Beyonds in order. And he's like, on episode 2, you mentioned a girl named Katie. I'm guessing it didn't work out. Like, right. Like I think of it as such an abstract thing of like my cancer, my divorce, or this, but like there's like stories and like what I did like the night before with people that are no longer part of my life. Like that's weird. Yeah. Like that. It's always weird to think about like, I don't want kids, so God, knock on wood, they never happen to me.
Right.
But like, yeah, for people nowadays, like, yeah, you can, if anything ever horrible happens to somebody, or if you just want to know your parents on a different level, the ability to go back and watch all of this horrible online content of all the stupid things they did.
Yeah, it's amazing. You'll go back and be listening through something and just hear one, like in your case, one name. It just jogs your memory. Like, oh my God, maybe I would have never remembered that. But I always feel bad because I'm not good at journaling or diary. I'm not good at any of that.
That's what replay is for.
And that's what the podcast and all of our video content is just like, oh, well, it's kind of there. It's kind of chronicled.
I don't need to do any effort.
I'm talking about
to a
games
mic.
mostly, but it's there.
Someone will take this and boil it down to a Wikipedia page, and I'll be able to look at it.
Finally, I live on.
But Greg, getting more general, like with all your time on camera, on YouTube, all you've learned throughout the years, streaming, do you have tips for people that want to get started out there, big do's and don'ts that you've learned throughout the years?
I mean, yeah, my story goes in, it'll sound like I'm a dinosaur at the time, but the story goes, and the tip goes, do it. Start creating right now. Because the story for me goes that in the 4th grade, right, I had an issue of Game Informer. Or no, Game Pro. Jeez, Louise. I'm on
Please,
Game
how
Pro.
dare you?
I was like, whoa, wait a second. I'm not that old. I'm not that young. I had an issue of Game Pro, right? Cover was Death and Return of Superman, and the inside was Maximum Carnage. And after reading it cover to cover for a month, like every night I read it cover to cover, I walked in, it dawned on me, that somebody got paid to write this. So I walked into the kitchen, showed it to Mom, and said, I know what I want to do with my life. I want to write about games. And she said, all right, we can make that happen. And so I started doing the journalism stuff in junior high school, went to Mizzou to get a journalism degree. And I graduate Mizzou. I have this journalism degree from, the best journalism school in the country. And I'm like, I'm going to write my own ticket. EGM, Game Informer, everyone will die to have me.
Sure.
And nobody would respond to my letters. Nobody would touch me with a 10-foot pole. And so I went to work at a local newspaper. And after a year, convinced them to give me a video game column in the weekly magazine and a blog when I could write in. So I wrote every day, did the column every week. And after 6 months of that, applied at IGN. And the story goes that I looked at my Gmail. Obviously, this is the one where I get hired. I looked at my Gmail, and this was my 13th attempt on my Gmail at applying to IGN.
Wow.
And the first 12 times, didn't even get the courtesy of a rejection letter. Like nothing. Just into a black hole and nothing. I think One Up was the only people ever who were like, sorry, you're not good enough. I'm like, all right, thanks for telling me at least, So I get that 13th letter in. I get contacted, interviewed, and hired within 24 hours. So literally overnight, all my dreams came true. And I was moving from middle of Missouri to San Francisco in 2 weeks, and I couldn't believe it.
Sure.
But when I got out there, I asked them like, what changed? Like, what was different? I'm the same guy. You know what I mean? I could have been doing this a year and a half ago for you. And they said, well, you proved you could do it. Before this, daily content, you were doing an article here, and then 3 months later a column here, and then 6 months later this little piece here. Like, you suddenly had a voice, and you were doing it over and over. So I always say, take that and put it to what you're doing now. Is like, if you say you want to do what we do, or you want to do something similar or whatever, you should be writing every day on your blog. You should be making vlog videos. You should be podcasting with your friends. You should be the thing that always stops people is like, well, I don't have a camera. Well, I don't have my own site. And it's like, well, that's all those are excuses that are stupid. Like, the point of you making the content now is not for you to get 1 million subs right now. The point is for you to shake off the rust and learn how this works. Like, you guys know, you podcast all the time. I always talk about it. This is a muscle. This is not something that you just come out of the gate and you're awesome at. You can go, like you're talking about the Chronicles. Go listen to my first appearance on IGN as AFK and GameScoop. I am a rock. I don't talk. I sit there because I can't believe I'm on a podcast I used to listen to. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, it's such a weird thing to do, and then you think it's so easy until you sit down and try to do it. You have to get out there and just do it, create the content and put it up, and not worry about what it's doing there. Understand that you're building something.
Right. I'm amazed by your work ethic. Do you think it's changed throughout the years?
No, I mean it's adapt and evolve, right? It evolved, I should say. You know, I mean, I remember like when I first got hired, like, you know, that first week at IGN, Jeremy Dunham turned to me, he's like, "Do you like wrestling games?" And I'm like, "I love wrestling games." He's like, "You're the new wrestling guy. We do this, you know, SmackDown versus Raw countdown every year. You're gonna do it." So there'd be Friday nights where I'd go out, go to the movies, go get dinner and drinks, and then like 2 a.m. when the bars close, like, all right, I'm gonna go back to IGN and capture wrestling entrances. You know what I mean? Because that's just how I worked and how I'm wired and what I want to do. Like, I still take pleasure out of creating the content and then interacting with the people who consume it. You know what I mean? And like, that's what's so great about what we do now. Like, again, I was so naive to think that I was going to take naps. You know what I mean? Like, there's always more work to be done than is humanly possible here. But the joy is like on a day-to-day where we're like, we've announced this PS I Love You show, and now my Twitter feed is filled with people not being critical of it, but being excited about it. You know what I mean? That was the big thing of what Colin always talks about with what we're doing, is that we exchange the reach of IGN for the intimacy of Kind of Funny. And those first few months for sure were really like this weird, like, battered relationship kind of thing where we'd put something up and then I'd cringe looking at the comments. Get it? Because like for IGN, so many people are reading it that the people who want to come comment are the ones who are mad and hate you. Whereas this one, we put out content and I go to look at the comments and everybody's like, I agree with they're actually having discussions and talking and being friends and they like us. And it's like, right, like we aren't 6 million subs anymore. We are 300,000 or whatever. We are this group that actually likes each other and best friends and all that stuff that sounds so hokey but actually is proof in the pudding every day.
Yeah, absolutely. So you've done such a good job of turning yourself into a brand, if I may say so. Because like even at like
you're allowed to say that.
I will say that.
Kindoffunny.com.
There we go. At the GameStop Expo, which you both were at, you were streaming with Kind of Funny the entire time. So we were like signing Game Informer posters. So many people came up and had a shirt with your dumb face on it. It was stunning. Does it weird you out? Is there like a certain level of narcissism that you just have to have if you're gonna get into this industry?
I mean, I think, you know, the joke right now that Colin has been trying to get to take off and is actually taking hold, sadly, is this whole thing making fun of my ego. But he knows that it's funny because I don't have that. You know what I mean? Like, I totally, like, if I'd come up a different way, you know, what we are and who we are and who all the personalities in this industry are, is this weird new version of celebrity where people love Angelina Jolie, but when they meet her, what is she going to be like? You don't know. Whereas when you meet us, when you guys come and meet us, when they come and meet you at a Game Informer event or something, they know who you are, right? And that's where it's not really celebrity, it is friendship. And that's this weird thing about it. So there is that weird thing, and that was one of my big concern when we were launching the Patreons, right? Of like, hey, best friends, give us money to be better friends. And it was like, dude, that's not what I want to say. And like, to their credit, to my audience's credit, they didn't take it that way. The people who want to hate us and throw stones and make YouTube videos about how we're horrible, we're never going to be supporters to begin with. And they can say that. But the kids who are supporting us on Patreon know the fact that, no, I'm really his friend. I'm just helping him achieve his dream, which is my dream, which I'm in on the ground floor of. So I'm, you know what I mean? Like, I'm there with it. So it's taken a long time to understand that. I remember probably a year into Podcast Beyond when I started going to the event circuits and you'd meet people and they'd come up to you and they'd be like, I'm such a huge fan. And I'm like, that's great. Awesome. And then they wouldn't say anything back and I would be like, all right, man. And I remember ahead of I'm bombing. These people I'm not giving them what they want. And so like you jump ahead, like I think it was another year or two and I was at some IGN meet and greet drunk and the same thing happened. And I'm like, awesome. And I just go, I'm sorry. And the guy goes, what? And I'm like, I'm bombing. I'm not what you expected. You wanted me to be. And he's like, no. You don't understand. Like, I can't get over that I'm talking to you. Like, I've heard you for 57 hours, and all I do is sit there and listen to you. I have no idea how to talk to you.
Right.
And I was like, oh, right, of course. Like, I know it from my side of it, but not your side. So, like, that's where it's like now where somebody walks up and, you know, you get the guy who's, like, shaking or is, like, stammering, and it's like the first thing, just a giant hug. You know what I mean? Like, thank you for everything you've done for me. Like, I can't. And that's the thing. When people try to thank me, I try to cut them off every time. It's like, nope, you have no reason. I talk and you watch it and, like, you are the one giving me something. But it is this symbiotic relationship where one doesn't happen without the other. And it always, you know, it crushes me when I'll get these emails or I'll meet, like, I think it was at a Kind of Funny Live, or it might have even been the last Podcast Beyond they did, that 400 live event, where I was talking to a guy and he started crying because his mom had just got diagnosed with cancer and my videos had gotten him through that diagnosis and then her through, you know, chemo. And then I started crying because, like, you don't understand. You guys got me through my, you know what I mean? Like, that's this weird thing of like, consuming the content and talking about it is just as valuable as me making it and being there for you. We're both there for each other. And it's this weird ball of wax that I'm sure, like, I just did, you know, a Patreon podcast before this for patreon.com. And I'm sure some guy who just like plays music is listening to this having no idea what I'm talking about. But it's this weird world we live in now.
Yeah. Hey, speaking of fandom, I feel like we have to get into this whole thing because I'm also fascinated by your relationship with Hideo Kojima, how that's changed throughout the years. Like, you just sent out a selfie not too long ago where it was you and Kojima and Keeley, and it's like, what?
Yeah.
Kojima's out of his dark hole? Like, how the hell is this happening? You filmed like the whole Metal Gear Solid Legacy interviews. I want to know everything about your relationship with Kojima.
Man, that comes, I mean, that's totally fostered through just being the Metal Gear fanboy at IGN for so long. You know what I mean? Because like it was funny, I was one of our, well, somebody's getting, no. I had to go through and find a bunch of old photos. I'll leave it at that. I had to go find a bunch of old photos, right? And I was going through my phone and I ran into the first time I ever saw Hideo Kojima, and it was when we were going in at E3 for PlayStation whatever, or for the PlayStation E3 conference. I forget what year it was, but Colin and I were in front and he was behind us in the VIP line. And we both wigged out, and I was like, I got to do it. And I turned around, his translator was there, and I'm like, all right, I'm a huge fan, and can we take a photo? And they were like, and I handed them the IGN business card, and they looked down, and they didn't recognize Greg Miller, but they recognized IGN.
Right.
And like, oh, sure, sorry, yeah, of course. So we took the photo, and it's like, I have this moment in time when I meet my hero, like this guy who had such an impact on my life, but he has no idea who I am, right?
Right.
And so the jump for me is then, like, because this was before Up at Noon, which is really what changed, I think, people's perception of me in terms of like, oh, because like if you knew me beforehand, then you really liked Beyond, or you read the reviews and didn't hate me and think that I overrated Uncharted 3. So you jump from that first meeting to the PlayStation 4 launch event they did in New York, right? Where, if you remember, people went there and they took over a whole hotel, and we went room to room, and we got our PS4s and And they had scheduled for Ground Zero's an interview with Kojima there. And so I walked in, and I'm in my shirt and tie, like I'm doing my whole shtick. And we walked in, and the translator was there, but we only brought 2 mic packs. So we mic'd Kojima, and we mic'd his translator, and sat them down. And then I sat behind the camera. And I sit down, and Kojima turns to his translator, and is like, and then the translator turns to me and he goes, Mr. Kojima would like to know why we're not getting the full Greg Miller experience.
Wow.
And I was like, like, this guy, what? And I'm like, I'm sorry, there's only 2 mics, and this is how it's got to be. And I'm like, you know, and he's like, well, through his translator, he's like, yeah, I watch Up at Noon every week. I totally know who you are.
Really?
I love your Peace Walker pieces. And I'm like, oh my God. You know what I mean? Like, because it's, you forget like the timeline that, you know, when I'm meeting him at the PlayStation E3, he hasn't seen, Peace Walker isn't out yet or whatever. He hasn't read that review. He doesn't know my face or whatever, And so it just extrapolates out of that into this, where it's just like, yeah, now he knows that I'm this Metal Gear guy. He understands who I am. He understands the audience and the friends I carry with me that like are with me, right? Like if you're a Metal Gear fan, usually you're a Greg Miller fan in some way.
Yeah.
Up until I said I had exclusive Let's Plays, then you want to be dead.
But Greg Miller, you're such a fan of Metal Gear. Is it true that you think Peace Walker is the best game of last gen?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. 100%. Yeah.
It's mind-blowing. I can't imagine how excited you must have been for Phantom Pain then, just to see that nugget of an idea in Peace Walker that you already thought was the best thing known to man.
I remember talking to Kojima when we went on our Metal Gear Solid 5 cover story, and I had just played Peace Walker ahead of time as sort of research, and I fell in love. I'm assuming a huge part of why you like Peace Walker is the Fultoning experience. I realized like, oh, it's just an open world game where you kidnap everyone with balloons, and I don't even think I understood how amazing that would end up being. So having been the longtime Peace Walker fan, I'm assuming this is just this insane experience for you.
Yeah, no, for sure. Like it was, I didn't know what I was getting into, you know what I mean? Because like people had said, can I yell at my dog?
Please do.
Portillo, you piece of garbage. Come here. I'm coming, Colin.
Little P-Dog over there.
Portillo, you come in this room, you stop barking. Oh, you being bad.
Portrait behind him.
Oh, what a bad dog you are. Ruining the Game Informer podcast. Oh, you're going to get it tonight.
I wish I just heard like the dog barking from signs, just like the weird silencing.
That's good.
That's good.
Look at, he brings this over here to apologize. This is what he does.
Oh, adorable.
Cute little rose.
He's an adorable wiener dog for sure. But,
oh, gosh.
So what I was actually scared about Phantom Pain for a while because I remember Ground Zeroes had come out, and again, I'm in full video host coverage mode or whatever. So I wasn't even like going to the events and playing it or whatever. So people would come back and tell me, yeah, oh man, it's Peace Walker HD, it's Peace Walker 2. I'm like, oh, dude, I can't wait to play Ground Zeroes.
Yeah.
And I sat played Ground Zeroes and it didn't click.
Right.
Like I was just like, I'm not faulting anybody. There's no progression. Like I don't like being dropped in this world and feeling like I'm boxed in. You know what I mean?
100%.
So I was like, I'm not even excited for Phantom Pain. And then it was, all right, now go play they did that preview event. And I went down and I was like, this is going to be the best. This is going to be everything, I really, really want out of this thing. And just, I'm going to freak out and lose my mind. And I did.
Perfect.
So, like that was the thing of like Phantom Pain for right now, being a little over, I think it's 110 hours in, you know what I mean? Jesus. Like I'm going to platinum that game, but I have decided, I think I'm trying right now. I was doing the thing where I'm like grinding on the mission tasks. And I'm like, you know what? Now that I'm not having fun with it, so let's stop. You know what I mean? Like Extra Life's coming up. I think I'm really gonna put a push on platinum on that time or whatever.
Super smart.
But yeah, like I'm so in love with that game, and that's the fun part too. Of like I went and did that review event down there where it was play it for a week or whatever. And I came back with no one to talk about, and now all the guys at Kind of Funny are playing it except Colin, and they're all losing their minds. So I get to like relive their excitement too.
Greg, what's your percentage of completion at in Phantom
I
Pain?
believe it's 75, 76 right now.
That's tremendous.
I love it.
And I don't even because where's the rest of it come from? I don't even know. Is it all
It's like
side
the
stuff?
mission tasks count for so much. It feels like every time I knock one of those off, I get a % back.
Okay.
Jesus. All right, let's talk about that.
I went and did, all the side ops are done, and like that didn't even move the needle. And I was like, mother of God.
Let's talk about the Metal Gear Solid Legacy interviews then. How did that work? How long did you talk? Did you get like some good interactions with Kojima during that whole experience?
The one for the collector's edition?
Yeah.
The collector's edition one, Kojima wasn't there for. That was during the preview Metal Gear boot camp thingamajig.
Okay.
So we went down there, and they were like, yeah, do you, like we're not going to talk to many press people. Do you want to do it? And I was like, yeah, okay, sure. Yeah, I'd love to do that. You know what I mean? And like, then I sat down, and it was like Metal Gear's that thing that like, I mean, I don't know if you've ever noticed, I'm very verbose. Now, Kevin, why are you moving the table when I'm on the table? We're setting up Colin and Greg live, so then all hell's breaking loose.
That's fine.
So they asked me one question about Metal Gear Solid 3, and I just rant for like 30 minutes about it. Like, okay, I think we have the soundbite. So let's move to the next. You know what I mean? Like it was just exciting to talk about that.
Well, what about that interview then, where it was the clip? It was like that bundle. It was a surprisingly emotional video where Kojima visits the house of that fan, and there's a clip of you talking about just how much you love
folding a tank and
exactly. And Kojima's just kind of sitting there watching you. What was that whole thing? What was happening there?
That was mind blowing because like they reached out and were like, yeah, like are you going to be in LA? And I'm like, yeah, I'll be in LA. You're like, all right, Mr. Kojima's coming through. He'd love to talk to you. He'd love to be interviewed. And I was like, oh sure, yeah, I'll totally interview him and stuff. And I showed up with a camera and stuff. And then they were like, no, he wants to interview you. And I was like, what? And like, no, he's making his own video. He wants to talk to you about Metal Gear. And I was like, that doesn't make any sense, but okay, sure. And so yeah, like we sat down and that interview went on for an hour. And at the hour mark, again, his people were like, Mr. Kojima, like, we got to wrap it up. And he turned and he said something like really frantically to them. And then they translated it back to me and it was like, I just want to keep talking. Can we keep talking? And I was like, exactly what I'm talking. It was like that genuine moment of like, yes, this is exactly what I'm talking. Can you come to San Francisco? And I'm like, we don't have to record it. All I want to do, we can just go to a bar and talk all day long about Metal Gear.
Yeah.
I have so many questions.
Is that entire video online somewhere?
No, they have it all. And I asked them before, you send it to me, I'll put it up on our channels. And like I think they still have plans for it eventually, so I don't know.
What's the nerdiest interaction or your favorite interaction you've had with Kojima?
I mean, that would definitely take the cake.
Is it like something specific where like I really love talking to him about this specific detail in Metal Gear Solid's history? It was when we were going back, it's not in the interview, he kept going back and forth of like, one of his questions was, how did I feel about the blood being, all over the character? And I'm like, I love that idea, And I was like, I took screenshots of because it was, at the time, it's always hard with the timelines, right? At the time of this interview, when he's talking to me, I believe I was the first person he had met from the press or enthusiast side who had beaten the game. Oh, wow.
So, there were people in the room. He would ask questions and then preface it for the people in the room to cover their ears. Because he was asking things about, like, the ending and what I thought about the final missions,
Sure.
And he's like, well, what do you think about the blood? And I'm like, I think the blood's awesome, I'm like, I have this great photo of it, caked on my character. And I'm like, I upload it all on my phone. He's like, can you bring your phone? So like, I bring out my phone and like, we're going through photos of my dog to get to my soldier sitting there covered in blood and stuff. Like, it was one of those things where he was like, Wait, because coming into it, it's like, is this something he wants to do, or is this something somebody wants him to do, and he's just gonna go play along? But like, we sat there and just had this giant conversation about Metal Gear where he was into it and wanted to see what I had and wanted to know what I had to say. It was amazing.
It's like a huge victory lap for him. It
Yeah.
seems like. I mean,
Yeah. Oh,
obviously
yeah,
little
totally,
parts of it are bittersweet, but I mean,
You had a smaller version of that, I guess, in the cover story, since we were the first to play Ground Zeroes for that thing. And then we talked to Kojima the next day, and he was so keen. I'm like, even on Ground Zeroes, that tiny experience, like, all right, tell me exactly what you did. Which route did you take? What did you think of rescuing Paz? Just like picking your brain for every detail about that game.
yeah, it was wild.
God, I'm so jealous. But Greg, we should probably let you go since you're setting up for the next show.
Yeah. Here's Kevin working. I've stolen the real internet, but Kevin's
Hi,
over there.
Kevin.
just
How's it going,
doing his
sir?
thing.
Hello,
Cool. All right. But thank you so much for joining us. We hope to talk to you again
Guys,
in the future.
anytime.
at
Thank
some
you so
point.
much for having me.
Greg. Always a pleasure.
Yeah, best
Love
of
you
luck in the
guys.
future. God bless Kind of Funny.
Thank
Cool.
you.
All right. Well, that's it for the overall Game Informer show. Thank you for tuning in, and we'll see you next week.
Thank you.
Bye.
It's time for the Power Hour. We're ready to go.
Do you remember that guy when we're at E3 in Helgeson and we're leaving, and it was some guy asking for money, and Matt, said something, no, don't have any or whatever, and the guy's like, you should be on radio. You've got a really good voice for radio, which Matt, of course, does.
Yeah.
Matt has a great voice for radio.
Yeah, all right voice, I guess.
I just think I don't know. I think like I just got the, compared to Matt, I just think like I got the like succinct sort of like just a little bit snap. Like I just get to the point.
Yeah, I think I know what you're saying, Tim.
Okay, gotcha. Okay, great. Matt, what was the best thing that ever happened to us?